A good evening to each and every one of you. And of course, I cannot see myself when I am getting ready for my show because that's how things operate. But first and foremost, to everybody who's out there, I am dressed a little dabbernesher like you would say for this particular evening because it is Valentine's Day. And I want to say happy Valentine's to everybody. Welcome to Pontificating with Pete Saturday night, Revolutionary Change. I hope my lighting is okay. The reason for the delayed start is not because I was late. It's because I am still having a problem getting this camera adjusted. The last show, it was really good. Tonight, we'll see what we can do, just kind of dealing with the ins and outs of trying to improve the tech on this channel, which is okay. We'll say it's okay. But for a small and mighty channel, I think we're getting along just fine. I hope you're all doing well. Remember, very important right out of the box. If you could, please smash that like button if you haven't already. I don't even see a cue for that, but we want to get it up there. I'll just do it myself. Like, please, like and subscribe. And if you could get this out there to as many people as possible, we would really appreciate it. So this is going to be a very interesting night. And we're going to have a lot of different stories to cover, a lot of different angles of varying degrees of very important, relevant topics to this moment. Obviously, we have a very substantial story that we're going to get to later in this evening regarding Michael Jackson. We're also going to be touching upon a number of different key stories that are going on at this moment, not the least of which is additional components to Jeffrey Epstein. We're going to be speaking with Ken McCarthy at the top of the hour regarding the connection between JFK and Charlie Kirk, which is very substantial. There is also a deeply disturbing story regarding Erika Kirk that I'm going to be covering in conjunction with Candace Owens. And if that's not enough, we also have Howard Lutnick, who is let's just say for somebody who is so high up on the totem pole, to be the Secretary of Commerce and to be so deep within the Epstein web and to admit that he's been to the island with his children. I would think that that is something that is so beyond disturbing, and the fact that we are living in a time of great lawlessness. We are living in a time where no one is going to bite the bullet for their actions. And it is incumbent upon us to say that we're not going to put up with this anymore. And that's why we're here. Revolutionary change is not just a marketing ploy. That is what this channel is about. That is what we're trying to do. And I think our trusty mod, Mehdi, has brought up a very good point. Technical glitches and different problems are going to happen on this channel as a result of a variety of different reasons, not the least of which is the topics that we cover on a regular basis. Friend of the show, Guy Christensen, who has a YouTube channel, has been shut down. He will be coming on Monday night to talk about this. And that is going to be a very important conversation, to say the least. So with all the things going on right now, I want to get this out of the way because I think it's actually very important to everything that we're talking about at this moment. And that leads me to somebody who, again, we covered the other night. Obviously, Hassan Piker and Jennifer Welch talking about Gavin Newsom running for president. He clearly is the favorite of the Democratic establishment. He's going to get the money. He's going to get the infrastructure, among other things. And people are still peddling around thinking that somebody is going to come and save them in this broken duopoly party. Not happening. But there are people that are going to get excited about the prospect of AOC running for president. And this is her at I want to get this right. So this was an event held in Munich, and there were multiple roundtables that were held with a variety of different people. It was called a Munich conference is ostensibly what this was, and more or less a political forum with a bunch of, we'll just say, high-ranking officials. So what they're technically calling this event, like I said, I want to get this right. Going off the cuff here. So the name of this particular event is the Munich Security Conference. And this was held in conjunction with a conversation regarding the U.S. aid to the Jewish state of Israel. So AOC, who we know is going to run, Let me take that back. I'm very confident that she's going to run for president. So she had a lot to say regarding what is currently going on. But there are multiple layers to this. So here we go.
That's absolutely right. I think one of the connections and relationships that is under discussed, particularly in the security space, is the fact that I believe we're seeing an economy around the world, including in the United States, that extreme levels of income inequality lead to social instability and drives, in a sense, in authoritarianism, right-wing populism, and very dangerous domestic internal politics. And that is a direct outcome of not just income inequality, but the failure of democracies over decades to deliver. The failure to deliver higher wages, the failure to rein in corporations. The point was just made about antitrust. In the United States, antitrust is such a foundational bedrock value, not just because the ascent of monopolies create the abuse of power in corporations and market power, but there is a level of market concentration and corporate consolidation where a massive company can get so big that its consolidated power can rival that of nation states.
So what are you prepared to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Are you going to continue to support candidates that are supported by AIPAC? Because that's something you've been making a habit out of lately. I also want to know why they get invited to these conferences and what exactly they're hoping to accomplish. That's something that I think often gets overlooked because, again, they're looking for somebody who can step in and provide some type of an avenue that is outside of the traditional two-party duopoly lane. But what do you think you're getting with Alex? That's my question to everybody who was so excited about everything that she had to say at this particular event, although I wasn't particularly impressed, to be honest. But you're going to get somebody. Somebody is going to do it. Somebody is going to run in the left lane in the Democratic Party. And what that looks like, I'm not 100% certain yet, but odds are it's going to be AOC or Ro Khanna or possibly both, because somebody's going to attempt to do it. I'm here to tell you that if you're getting excited about that prospect, don't. Do not get excited about it. Because when the rubber meets the road, Alex is going to capitulate to the system, not to the people. Now, she's speaking very carefully, very concisely, and not trying to trip over her words. Okay. Again, very often becoming president of the United States is pageantry. How well do you perform in front of the camera? That's often what a lot of people are looking for. It's the old joke from Back to the Future. No wonder your president has to be an actor. He's got to look good on television. Well, this is sort of the same thing. You're looking for AOC and how well can she perform? Well, in this case, she's talking about clear-cut problems that do exist in the United States. She's not wrong about that. We have descended into oligarchy, that is obvious. We are bordering on fascism. Corporate special interests have completely engulfed our system. There is no coming back from this system, so you cannot salvage it. Whatever which way you want to look at this and think that it can be saved, that's a waste of time. So don't waste it. We have to be much more diligent about how we're going to change. And Alex's decisions are ones that are not going to be made from decisive leadership. That's not who she is. Now, I've said she's a fantastic influencer. And if that's the role that she wants to play, then so be it. You can do that. But to be the leader of the free world, some people truly get in over their head in a very big way. Not only is she out of her league, but so are the people who think that she's capable of running this country. She can't run her own congressional district. She's one of the 5 to 10 worst representatives on the Hill when it comes to getting, forget legislation, amendments, anything done. There are these arguments of, well, who gets the most bills passed? Yeah, we know most bills suck, but that's what amendments are for. That's why Bernie Sanders, for all of his flaws, was always regarded as the amendment king. He could never get through the type of bills that this country desperately needed, but he would always make sure the must-pass bills had amendments attached to them that benefited working people. What in the flying F has Alex ever done as far as that's concerned? And now she's going to jump ahead of the line and become president? Okay. Well, like I said, performance art works well. but that doesn't mean that that is the answer that we need.
In democracies, we have elected leaders. And in massive corporations that then begin to consume the public sector, gobble up the spending, they start to call the shots. And we're starting to see this with some of the billionaire class throwing their weight around in domestic politics and in global politics as well. So it is of utmost urgent priority that we get our economic houses in order and deliver material gains for the working class, or else we will fall to a more isolated world governed by authoritarians that also do not deliver to working people.
So we already are living in a world where we are becoming more isolationist. But you're also talking about a world where you want to be a part of what? The WEF, the New World Order. You have to be more specific about that, because there's a reason why people are embracing libertarian isolationism in the States. Perhaps because the economic interests do not benefit working people. They benefit, in fact, not even the middle class. They benefit the upper class, mostly, overwhelmingly, the ruling class. And if you are not going to get radical with your language, and I mean really radical, like Bernie Sanders 2015, Howard Dean 2003, radical language when it comes to the economic plight of this moment. Heck, even Ron Paul of 2008. If you're not going to talk like that, get the hell out of here. Just get out. You're wasting time. You're wasting money. But remember, what is the one thing that the Democratic establishment cares about more than anything else? Making sure that the consultant class gets paid. And if Alex runs, the consultant class will get paid by those that support her and those that will come after her. She will be a rock star. She will generate a lot of interest. She'll be a hit for all the podcasts. Believe me, if there's anybody who's hoping that she runs, it's people in left liberal politics and conservative politics that do YouTube shows, because she will be a soundbite for them to use over and over and over again for the next year, year and a half. And they'll love it. Well, I'm not saying they're going to do it today, but I am saying that this is going to become a problem. And as David Hunter points out, Zoran is backing Kathy Hochul for governor. She allowed the DHS to buy a 1,500-bed concentration camp in upstate New York. Zoran said nothing. Zoran is mayor because the oligarchy stopped praising politicians. One thing you have to remember about somebody like Zoran is that he's going to do what he feels he has to do in order to get things done in New York City. And that's going to probably be to the sacrifice and detriment to many people throughout the state of New York if he's backing Kathy Hochul, who I do think is very vulnerable to a challenge, which is probably why Zoran is backing her, with the condition that he's going to get things done in New York City. But that's the dirty side of politics. You make illicit deals that you otherwise don't want to make. And that's the problem. But if you will see this next clip with AOC, I just want to hammer this home, because there's two clips here that I'm going to show you guys. The first one is of AOC, and the second one is of the person who I do believe is going to be Gavin Newsom's vice presidential pick, who also spoke at this conference. So AOC also had an opportunity to comment on what's going on in Taiwan and whether or not Taiwan is a part of China or whether we should do anything about it. Really stands to reason why this is a pretty big deal. Well, what ends up happening in many instances when you put people in a position to have to make the type of comments in which you cannot fence it? You have to make a decision. And the one thing that ends up happening in many instances when people are put in a position where they have to make a choice, those that truly succeed in politics, and you see this much more in the Republican Party than you do in the Democratic Party, you cannot be thinking about what the media is going to say, what the consultant class is going to say. You either have conviction and belief in what you're standing for and what you're fighting for, or you don't have anything. That more than anything else is the problem. The easy answer doesn't work. And the one thing I have accepted when I started doing what I was doing, when I got involved with Jen, when I started doing this podcast with Jen, and when I ultimately started putting out public posts, social media, sharing my comments. One thing I learned is that I don't care what people think of me. I don't care if people hate me. I really don't. I have accepted that reality, which a lot of people either can't handle. And I think that in itself is a very big part of the problem. Here's why AOC is not ready for prime time.
And should the U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
I think that this is such a, I think that this is a,
I haven't even finished with it yet, and that's almost 15 to 20 seconds worth of I don't know. I can't get the words out. You know why she can't get the words out? Because she didn't rehearse this part of the play. And when you don't rehearse this part of the play and you have to act off the cuff, you have to think for yourself. And she's not capable of thinking for herself, because if she did, she'd be out of her element, which she clearly is. Not only that, but if you really think that she's capable of running for president and she's not going to be coached every pillar to post, every which way, this is a prime example of that. She can't think for herself. What is she doing here? Let's not go there. Let's not go there. Don't denigrate people that are working people. I don't like that shit. She's a bartender. Fuck that shit. I was a bartender for years. It's not cool. Don't go there. But when it comes to her being a federal legislator, she's a joke. And this person's going to be president of the United States. And I'm not here, to basically say, oh, this system can be salvaged, we should have this. No. People need to get into the mindset of what is and what isn't. What is realistic versus what is this fantasy that people are living amongst? This wasn't even a hard push. She was simply asked, what do you make of what's going on in Taiwan? She can't answer that question immediately. Here, if I'm running for president of the United States, let's do a little role play right now. Peter Hager, running for president of the United States. What do you think about what's going on in Taiwan right now? I think the United States should stay out of the business of what's going on in Southeast Asia. Unless China is actively mass murdering people within that country, we have no business getting involved. And if they were, it is not incumbent upon the United States to arbitrarily go in solely to take apart China's control over Taiwan or the region in general. But one thing we've learned about China, their interests are almost universally economic. They do not want the United States to have anything to do with Taiwan. And you know what? I don't blame them. That's their part of the world. If China came over here and started messing with Mexico and Canada, yeah, maybe then we might have something to say about it. But no, we care about Taiwan because we care about economic arbitrage, controlling markets, money, resources. And if we can't control China, who can we control? So that's my off-the-cuff answer. Just thought of it on the spot. Can Alex talk like that? Probably not. And even if she could, she won't, because she's controlled opposition. Hate to say it, but reality is what it is.
This is, of course, a very longstanding policy of the United States. And I think what we are hoping for is that we want to make sure that we never get to that point. And we want to make sure that we are moving in all of our economic research and our global positions to avoid any such confrontation and for that question to even arise.
The chief executive's primary role is not domestic policy. It's foreign policy. The person who I think in this moment, if we are still stuck in this two-party duopoly, the person who was most qualified in this moment to be the chief executive who oversees the armed forces, it's Thomas Massie. That's who I would vote for. Because at least I know I would be dealing with somebody who isn't controlled by corporate special interests, but we live in reality, and we know that the odds of, it's one thing if he keeps his congressional seat, which I believe he will. It's another thing entirely for somebody like him to be in charge of the free world, and we all know that they'll kill him before that could ever happen. So, that being said, having lofty goals about theories of grandeur in her own mind, Alex probably will run for president. And with answers like this, she will fall flat on her face, and deservedly so. But that's not the only person that you need to be looking out for, because there was another person who had commentary at this event. And boy, was that commentary really, really cringeworthy. And the reason being is because, as Jen likes to say, it's in the eyes, Chico.
Ukraine, what does victory look like?
Ambassador? No, please. I'd love to hear your answer.
Yeah, it is. The two that I am on the panel with are much more steeped in foreign policy than a governor is. But
and you want to run for president of the United States? You come to a forum in Munich, Germany, specifically about foreign policy, and you can't answer this question. And this was a question regarding both Ukraine and I believe Taiwan. She can't answer this. And this woman is going to run for president. You could bet your bottom dollar she is. And she's the next Kamala. She is Gavin Newsom's Kamala. Why? She's a two-term governor in a swing state that Democrats must win if they're going to win the White House. So she will run. And unless something substantial happens, Gavin Newsom will be the nominee and Gretchen Whitmer will be his VP. Hear me now, quote me later. You can, again, these podcasts, they get archived. So it's not like you can't trace it back and see that I said this. But I'm telling you now, that's what's coming. I want to be the leader of the free world, and I'm going to defer to somebody else on this panel that I can't answer a basic question about foreign policy regarding endless war. Yes, if only we elect a Democrat instead of somebody like Trump, that'll make it better. This is Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Michigan. Okay. Yeah, Jen's getting on my ass. So yes, Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. She is the governor. I thought I alluded to it, and I apologize.
I do think that Ukraine's independence, keeping their land mass, and having the support of all the allies, I think is the goal from my vantage point. Go ahead, Ambassador. Do a better job.
The water in Flint, Michigan is still contaminated, despite what other people would have you believe. But it's not just Flint. It's also what's going on in Kalamazoo. The eyes, Chico. It's in the eyes. At some point, you have to come to terms with the fact that the two-party system is broken. It cannot be resuscitated. And if you think that if you just voted harder or voted bluer, that somehow, some way, that's going to solve the problem. It isn't. We have to get past this point completely. And at that moment, when everybody realizes, then the revolution will commence. But it's coming. You cannot tell me that with everything that's going on right now, that we're not heading in that direction. We are. Revolution is inevitable. And with leaders, I use that term loosely, with leaders like Governor Whitmer and Congresswoman like AOC, who both are going to run for president, most likely, this is what we're up against. There isn't but one person in the crowd that stands out. Hence why it's very likely that Gavin Newsom is going to be the nominee. And it's very likely that J.D. Vance is going to be the nominee. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a system that does that. And I also don't want to leave my country. So what are your options? Or what are our options? We don't have many. But we're going to have to start figuring out how we can collaborate together to make it so. If we don't, then inevitably darker days are ahead. And I do believe that that's what we're in for right now. Darker days are ahead. And as we have seen, in particular, when it comes to everything that's going on with the Epstein files, I want people to understand just how deep this rabbit hole goes. And when people talk about why things do not change, I want you to see what citizen journalism really looks like in real time. When we get distracted by all these other stories, this is what's happening to kids. We read them in the files. No one's prosecuted. Nobody. That's why stories like this will persist, and we'll keep hearing about it.
You said that you were on vacation, and now you're moving this small child to the airport. I thought you were on vacation. Do you have any comment about children that have gone missing that you've helped to escort across the country? We have footage here that a lot of these children don't know the sponsors that they are going to. What's going on? There's kids in the car here. They're moving these kids. They just turn the lights off. Excuse me. What's going on here? There they go. And notice they got out of here in such a hurry that they just left their bags here.
You know, these stories about children being trafficked is more common than you can possibly understand, especially in desperate parts of the world, but also parts here in the United States. And I'm not saying everybody's doing spirit cooking, but what I am saying is that there is an inherent danger to ignoring this crisis that is actually going on. Now, apparently this woman who was confronted by this citizen journalist is an Israeli. That was pointed out at the beginning of the clip. Can't look at the camera, can't acknowledge. Just keep going. Keep going and don't ask questions. Gets worse.
Think about that. They got out of here. We don't even know what's in those bags. The van that we just confirmed that they are now taking off. We are following them. We believe that they're taking these kids to the airport. Excuse me, why are you all wearing masks? Do you have any comment on that? Why are you hiding your identity? Do you have any shame, sir? There's no time to redeem yourself. Would you like to see the footage that we caught of what's going on? Were there IDs even checked just there? Were there IDs even just checked? Who checked their IDs? I didn't see any ID check just there. There was no ID check. Right. Why weren't there IDs checked? If I was going to go here, I'm not going to say anything next time.
Are a lot of the kids coming over here, are they trafficked or like what's the...
Some are. I'm not gonna lie. Some are.
Does that happen?
So first he thinks, I'm not going to say anything on camera. Turn the cameras off. Turn your secret camera in your jacket pocket on. Are these kids being trafficked? Some are. So he knows what's going on. This Border Patrol agent at McAllen International Airport is saying, yeah, these kids are being trafficked. What's he going to do about it? You think he probably hasn't complained? Maybe he has. But again, who's listening? Nobody's listening. McAllen Miller International Airport is in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. So clearly, this is a hot button area, and this is where a lot of problems go on. And no one is going to talk about it. No one is going to address this reality because for so many people, take this border agent, for example, this is his career, his livelihood, and he knows that he can't say anything. Because if he does, he's out of a job. And who the hell else knows what else that's going to be. Let me tell you guys something. One of the reasons I do what I do for a living is that I don't have to technically be on the grid. I do not answer to anybody. I do not make a salary. I make a living based off of my own capability, my own stick-to-itiveness, my ability to build relationships outside of the corporate infrastructure. Not everybody could do that. I know that I'm very fortunate to be able to say what I need to say, because anybody who works within it is very likely subject to being taken down several pegs if need be. Look at our friend Guy Christensen. His entire channel's been shut down. He's a young guy. This is a way for him to make a living. They took it away from him. We're going to have him on Monday night, and we're going to talk about it. But that's how real this is. As the guy said, I'm not saying anything on camera. Now, of course, it's a little sneaky to put him on the hidden camera, but he's saying, yeah, these kids are trafficked. And when he say, and the thing you also have to remember, ladies and gentlemen, when they say some kids are trafficked, what he really means to say is, yeah, a lot of them are trafficked. That's what's happening. Don't forget, there's a lot of different reasons why kids get trafficked, and it's not just for sex. They get trafficked to do child labor, work in the fields. They're, get abused in many different ways. And I'm sure it kills this guy. At least that's what it sounds like. Okay, that's good to know. But the idea that they're pulling channels because people are speaking truth to power is a really scary prospect that we must continue to speak out against.
And a lot that the kids come over here with a totally fake name.
It has.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way for us to verify.
And so they come over here with a fake name, and then they just come up with one. They just get a brand new identity. They could be anybody.
Have you seen that movie?
Sound of Freedom?
Yeah, Sound of Freedom.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Exactly like that. Shit happens.
You guys get the...
Okay, now I haven't seen the movie Sound of Freedom. I know that it has a conservative bend to it, but that doesn't really bother me. I would see it. I know that a lot of people were kind of on the fence, mixed feelings about the movie, but at the end of the day, there's no question that there's definitely a lot of truth in those types of projects because it's drawn from real life. Somebody experiences this and want their story out there, and rightfully so. So here we go. There's definitely, and thank you, Hazel. I appreciate it. That would be a good reason as any to see it. Hazel's one of our straight shooters on this channel.
Kids coming over here with the notes that are attached to them with the addresses, right? And a lot of times those addresses lead to like a sex trafficker or something, right? That's legit.
Yeah. There's a lot of shit that we can't tell.
What's the issue? Why can't you guys talk on camera?
It's the policies that we have, things that we can and can't say.
But why don't they want you talking on camera?
Honestly, though, I really wish there was more people like you.
One of the things that is universally true in a lot of corners of politics and just life in general, the guy who made the Sound of Freedom movie is a predator himself, and assuming that that is the case. There's also a lot of people who tell on themselves. There's a lot of people who commit crimes, who do a lot of evil things, and their way of trying to cleanse their soul of the crimes that they've committed is by trying to do things to help those that have gone through a similar situation. They can't live down their guilt. They can't admit their guilt. So again, they try to wash their hands of it. Well, I know I'm terrible, but let me try to score some karma points by exposing others that do the same thing. Hence why you can make a movie and have it be so spot on, as many people said Sound of Freedom was. So that doesn't surprise me in the least. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please make sure that you do. Let's try to get this out there as far and wide as we can.
Landed in Houston, and it appears as if MVM has requested a police escort because they don't want media exposing what they're doing. But if you look, they have all of the kids wearing masks and they have them keeping their head down. They're telling them to hide their face. Do you have any comment about children that have gone missing that you've helped to escort across the country?
No, and they're not going to, because in the end, whether or not all of these stories are 100% legitimate, or whether or not there are children that are being dragged into these situations, there are many other layers that go into this. There's a reason that it doesn't get talked about. These children are put in harm's way, not because they have any other choice. They're put in harm's way because it's good for business. The thing I think a lot of times people have a hard time understanding is that a lot of things when it comes to economics are all interconnected. When it comes to things like border policy, immigration, so many times what people fail to realize is that if the country truly wanted to shut its borders, it could. But why allow the floodgates to open? Why create an ICE brigade? Because this is all, it's all one big jobs program. It's all about money. It's all about power. These children, these vulnerable people from third world countries, this is just the cost of doing business. Remember, people sit in boardrooms like United Health and decide how many people have to die in order to get our shareholders to make their profit margins on the quarterly. That's real. And so is this. So nothing's really changed. And that's why it brings me to Howard Lutnick. Now, for those who know that Howard Lutnick is the Secretary of Commerce, an extremely powerful individual, this person essentially decides economic policy in many respects. Dirty little secrets regarding Mr. Lutnick. He lived on Palm Beach Island. I don't know if he still does. But you know who his neighbor was? His neighbor was Jeffrey Epstein. And as has been brought to many of our attention, he brought his family to the island. This is commentary that he made, I want to say about a year ago.
And there's a massage table in the middle of the room.
Ooh.
And candles all around and stuff. So I ask very insightful, cutting questions. I say to him, massage table in the middle of your house? How often you have a massage? And he says, every day. And then he gets weirdly close to me.
Ooh.
And he says, and the right kind of massage.
Ooh.
Now my wife is standing here. So she looks at me and I look at her and we say, I'm sorry, we have to go.
There is something extremely disingenuous about Howard Lutnick. He oozes slime ball attorney attitude. So when he's claiming that this is the type of behavior that was going on and he was trying to run away from it, I don't believe it. Why would you? It would seem to me that this is kind of a big deal. Why would Howard Lutnick say these things? Now, some attorneys deserve that scrutiny. Look at Alan Dershowitz. I'm not saying he's Dershowitz level, but you would have to agree that there's something very dishonest, abrasive about the way that Lutnick is talking.
And we left. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. Really? So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or for even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Oh.
And so I look back at it as a gift.
Yes.
He gave me a gift.
Yes.
Of a void. And so, yeah,
so
that's my story. A one and absolutely done.
Yeah, I don't believe him, and I don't know who would believe him. Howard Lutnick has had, no, they all, here's the thing, guys. I don't really think they care at this point. I don't think they care. I think this woman with the shit-eating grin on her face doesn't care. In the end, they're allowed to get away with what they get away with because Epps' empire is collapsing. Empire is collapsing because the rule of law no longer exists. People do not trust the system, and once the trust is broken, you can never get it back. That's why it's like rats on a sinking ship. That's why people like Lutnick, who admit or have been found out in the Epstein files to have brought his own family to the island. So he lied, claiming that, oh, I saw the massage table and I ran away, never to be seen again. No, that's not true. He's been found out. When it comes to the President of the United States, who again, his Justice Department, everything that they do is seemingly above the law, he's never going to do anything as long as he's in control. I really want people to understand that. He's not going to change. And neither are the people around him. But the more we see this, the more this is how business is allowed to be conducted, the faster we're going to get a break in this system for good. And the reason I say that is because here we have the President of the United States saying Trump claims ignorance of Lutnick's Epstein Island visit, and then says he heard he was there with his wife and children. That doesn't make the story any better. That makes it even worse. We've seen the pictures. We've heard the stories, the debauchery. Like, you bring kids to this island? And don't give me this bullshit about how you don't know what was going on. They all knew. They knew for years. President Trump on Thursday said he did not know about Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick's 2012 trip to pedo financier Jeffrey Epstein's notorious private island, but then told a reporter he had heard about details of the trip. Okay, so even Trump can't get his story straight, but whatever. That's not a surprise. They all lie. Speaking from the Roosevelt Room during an event to announce the repeal of a longstanding climate rule reviled by the fossil fuel industry, Trump was asked if he'd been aware of Lutnick's travel to Little St. James, the small part of the U.S. Virgin Islands previously owned by Epstein, and whether he still has confidence in the former bond trading executive. No, I wasn't aware of that. I actually haven't spoken to him about it, but from what I hear, he was there with his wife and children. And as he added, I was never there. Somebody will someday say that I was never there. Yeah, maybe if you keep convincing yourself in your own mind that you've never been there, maybe it'll come true. Maybe if you wish for it, it'll come true. Trump notably did not answer the second part of the question as to whether he has confidence in Lutnick, a longtime friend who had pushed to become Treasury Secretary after serving as the finance chief for the president's 2024 campaign. The Commerce Secretary has long been known to have had ties to Epstein, who was his next-door neighbor in New York, years before he pleaded guilty to prostitution charges in Florida as part of a sweetheart deal with a George W. Bush-era prosecutor, who later became Trump's first Secretary of Labor during his first term. In October, he told the New York Post he'd cut off contact with Epstein, who died in a New York jail cell while awaiting sex trafficking charges in 2019 after a 2005 encounter that he claims had left him so unsettled he vowed to never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. As you can now see, that is a lie that can be verified. And if you're willing to tell one lie, how many more lies are you willing to tell? But documents released by the Justice Department this year that were reviewed by The Independent showed that Lutnick not only maintained ties with Epstein as late as 2018, the year before he was indicted on federal sex trafficking charges, and long after he'd spent time in jail for state-level offenses related to his preying on young girls, but even arranged a visit to Epstein's Island in 2012. Lutnick grudgingly admitted to visiting the infamous landmass, which is part of the U.S. Virgin Islands, on Tuesday under questioning from Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen. And I will say this, if there is somebody in the Democratic Party in the Senate that has actually been doing a decent job, it's Senator Van Hollen. Give credit where credit's due. That's a pretty disgusting thought that I really don't want to get into. However, one lie begets another lie. And as Lutnick has displayed, as so many others have displayed, the lying never stops. But in the end, is anything going to come of this? Will there be any justice against Howard Lutnick for what he's done? And we all know that if he was willing to lie about when he cut off communication with Epstein, and there's proof that he went to the island, you know he's into something. So what's it going to take to get somebody like this out of power? Honestly, I hope he stays in power. You know why? Because when the system's breaking, don't try to lay another level of foundation in order to prevent it from collapsing altogether. Just let it fall, because it's inevitable. This system has to fall. And with stories like Howard Lutnick, scum-sucking bastards like him, who are a Zionist to the core, loves Israel with all his heart, body, mind, and soul, let him keep going. And hopefully, it will inevitably lead to the full collapse, not just of Israel, but of the U.S. empire through revolutionary change, and then we can start to build again. We have been on this collision course, if you will, for quite some time in terms of how are we, where was that inflection point? Where did it start? Where did we go off the rails as a country? Well, there are many different places that we can pinpoint to and say, yes, the United States has been in serious trouble ever since X, Y, and Z. To me, the jump off point, there's probably two. I would say that there's two. The first one was Woodrow Wilson, the creation of the Federal Reserve. And there are many things that came as a result of that. But then you had JFK. And JFK was the last president who truly tried to be the commander-in-chief. I am being told I have to acknowledge super chats first, so I will do that. So Ken, bear with me for a minute. Hannah McCool, thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member. Steve Gregory, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. And while we're at it, let's get them all out of the way. If you're watching on Rumble, make sure you're subscribed. If you are not subscribed on Rumble, please make sure that you do. Also, check out our pack, Revolutionary Change Pack. Use your phone, QR code, follow our work there as well. And of course, swing on over to patreon.com/revolutionary change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty, still suppressed, but still growing channel. And we thank you all for becoming YouTube members, but also Shatadon with the $1.99. AOCIA called out NAFTA, thought you might like that. Yes, there's a lot of things that she will call out correctly. That doesn't mean that revolutionary change will come as a result. And that's the only way you're going to end free trade programs like NAFTA, not coming at the ballot box, period. Jim Talib with the $5 super sticker. Always great to see you, my friend. Deep Green VO with the $2 AOCIA. That name's getting around, no question about it. Roger Meadows, great to see you, brother. Thank you for the $5. If she would have never left indie media, go once getting elected, she would have been well informed to know how to answer this question. And I believe it's a two-parter. It is. Thank you very much again for the $5. 2, would you like to interview third-party candidates Larry Sharpe, Libertarian for governor? I believe he's running in New York. And Andre Easton from PSL going for Richie Torres' seat. Here's what I will say. When it comes to Richie Torres' seat in New York, we're supporting Jose Vega. I understand he's running in the Dem primary, but he's the real deal, and he gets our support. Larry Sharpe, Libertarian for governor, I would talk to him. Absolutely. So if you want to hook that up, or you have any email connection that you want to make there, please, by all means, would really appreciate it. Libertarians, stop doing that, please. Libertarian Social Dem with the $4.99. One thing Western European, East Asian nations, and Jewish people are successful because they believe in a structured education, unlike our obsessed homeschool. I'm not blaming the homeschooling issue on that. There are many reasons why public education is a disaster in the United States. Remember, a lot of these students go to private schools. But keep in mind, the biggest reason why education is so downright abysmal in the U.S. is because multinational corporations want a dumb population that will be willing to work at Walmart and Amazon. That's it. It's very that about is as clear-cut an example of understanding the societal infrastructure when it comes to education and why that is the case. Thank you, Rogers. I really appreciate it if you would like to do so. Citizen Pendejo with the 50 pesos. Many things to be thankful for. Tony advocating for Palestine. 1, his diagnostics on media, vets being IDF fanboys. Jen piled on, they can do civilians. I would be inclined to agree. And thank you very much for the contribution. A big shout out and a big thank you to Dark Matter Zombies with the exceptionally generous $100 super chat. We are all Palestinian now. Free Palestine. We all will be free. Amen to that, my friend. Libertarian Social Dem, can you talk about the cryptic Epstein paintings? With the $199, yes, they're very cryptic and disturbing, including Bill wearing Monica's dress and little Georgie boy playing with airplanes like it's 9/11. Now they give away the game every day, don't they? And Piano Man with the $10 super sticker. Thank you so much for your generosity. It's always great to see you. It's always great to see all of you. And it is also always great to see all of our wonderful supporters that are here, not just this evening, but all the time. You know that this channel is heavily suppressed. We have to do everything we can to keep fighting through the algorithm. It is not an easy thing to do. But we also have some amazing friends of the show who provide us with much needed knowledge about a lot of different things that are going on, including something that I don't think gets talked about enough, and that is the direct tie-in between JFK's assassination and Charlie Kirk's assassination. He is the author of one of my absolute favorite books that I have read in recent memory, JFK and RFK, their battle against Zionist extremism. Friend of the show, Ken McCarthy, welcome back to Revolutionary Change.
Hey, thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
You're always welcome, my friend. How's everything going?
And you know, we are all Palestinians. I mean, this is a battle for humanity.
It really is. And I think that as more and more people come around and accept that this reality deserves no leeway, no gradual conditioning towards some type of a moderate approach, there is none, which is why we went so ham the other night on Jennifer Welch and everybody talking about her being this like arbiter between the comfortable liberal class and the populist left. And I'm thinking, no, because if you think that the solution is still going to come through the Democratic Party, you've already lost. And if you're trying to direct people in that direction, remember, the way politics is supposed to work is that the parties are supposed to come to you, not the other way around. And the capitulation that so often happens, as has been happening, is why things have gotten so bad. But when we look back in history, we realize that the people that were willing to buck the trends are the ones that often had the greatest impact. But it's often the case when they also end up, no pun intended, biting the bullet as well. And so there's a couple of different ways I want to do this tonight. I think we should start with JFK, and then we move into talking about Charlie Kirk and the tie-in that is there. In terms of how we kick this off, I found this incredible video that I really think hammers home exactly why there are many theories, and I'm sure you have yours as you've often discussed, as to why JFK had to be removed. But this one to me has always been the most logical. And as Jen often likes to say, who had the most to gain? Well, this will explain.
1963. President Kennedy sent his 8th letter demanding Israel open its nuclear facilities. 5 months later, he was dead. John Fitzgerald Kennedy became America's youngest elected president on January 20th, 1961. He was 43 years old, Catholic, charismatic, and determined to reshape America's future. Within months, he launched the Peace Corps, pledged to put a man on the moon by decade's end, but behind closed doors, Kennedy was fighting battles most Americans never knew about. In 1961, U.S. intelligence discovered Israel was building a nuclear reactor at Dimona in the Negev Desert. Kennedy was alarmed. He wrote to Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, demanded inspections, transparency. Ben-Gurion deflected, claimed it was for peaceful purposes only. Kennedy didn't believe him. Between 1961 and 1963, Kennedy sent multiple letters, each one more forceful than the last. He threatened to reconsider the entire U.S.-Israel relationship if inspections weren't allowed. In May 9.
This is a very important point. And the fact that there is well-documented evidence that the relationship between the United States and Israel was basically hanging by a thread due to the fact that Kennedy was trying to end the Cold War, and he understood the ramifications of what Israel was attempting to do with the Greater Israel Project, which was always on the table, which is why less than 4 years after he was assassinated, you had the Six-Day War, you had the USS Liberty attack, what was supposed to be the next Gulf of Tonkin incident, which happened less than a year and a half after he was assassinated. It's all too obvious to me, Ken, that if you can point the silver bullet in one direction, and only one, because there were multiple parties involved in JFK's removal, it would seem to me that Israel had a heavy hand in making sure that that was done. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at, there's two interesting things. One is there's mountains and mountains of assassination literature developed over decades. You know, you could stack the books literally to the ceiling, multiple conferences per year. And you're allowed to talk about the Cubans being responsible. You're allowed to talk about organized crime being responsible. You're allowed to even talk about the CIA being responsible. Some people have even mentioned the French because they had a grudge against Kennedy over Algeria. You're allowed to talk about that. Nobody has been allowed to talk about another party that you just mentioned, Israel, and the Zionist mafia, if we call it that. And what's interesting about all these other groups that you're allowed to talk about, like the CIA, like the Cubans, like organized crime, those organizations were infused with Zionists, believe it or not. James Angleton was a Zionist. The Israelis said he was the biggest, most important Zionist in America. I mean, how much more do we need to hear? And he was the head of counterintelligence for the CIA, an extremely important and secretive position in the CIA, where you're pretty much allowed to do what you want as long as you're moving the agenda forward. They don't watch too closely what the director of counterintelligence does. And if you want to test that, go to Google and ask who the director of counterintelligence is today. That man, whoever has that position now is an anonymous figure, and that he was an anonymous figure during the Kennedy assassinations. So think about that. So he was a Zionist. We often think of the Italians as being the organized crime geniuses in America, and they were certainly the biggest, highest profile. But the geniuses of organized crime in the United States were largely Jewish gangsters. Meyer Lansky being the one most people are familiar with, but believe me, the Pritzkers in Chicago, man, they laundered more money, and they got away scot-free. Lansky, everyone mentions his name, but the Pritzkers got away with it a lot. And then even when you talk about the Cubans, the Cubans did a lot of dealings with the mafia, obviously, organized crime, and the CIA. And there was Israeli and Zionist money in the Cuban casinos. And they were very annoyed when they were thrown out of Cuba. So everywhere you look, there are Zionist elements, and yet you're not allowed to talk about them. And you're certainly not allowed to talk about the facts. These are facts, by the way. This is not some conspiracy theory. The reason people haven't heard about the battle that John F. Kennedy was waging against the Zionist extremists of Israel is all those documents were classified until relatively recently. Which is why I put the book together. When I discovered these documents, and I'm not like a great researcher, but somebody pointed them out to me that they exist.
Don't be so modest. You did a very good job.
Someone else told me about them, and I read them, and I said, "My God, why didn't I know about this?" And he said, "Well, look at the dates. They didn't get declassified until the 21st century." And then I started digging into it, and wherever you look, there's a lot of Zionist influence, and probably the most, maybe not the most damning evidence is Angleton, James Angleton, head of director of counterintelligence. There was a man that he worked with in Israel who posed as an international lawyer, and he probably was an international lawyer, traveling back and forth between Tel Aviv and Washington, D.C. all the time. And Angleton tasked this man with reading Lee Harvey Oswald's mail starting in 1959. All right. So remember, the assassination was in 1963. Nobody heard of Lee Harvey Oswald until then, but somehow Angleton, the arch Zionist in America, knew who he was and tasked basically a Mossad operative or agent or officer, I don't know what, to track and keep an eye on Oswald. That fact was kept completely hidden and redacted until the early 21st century. And it's like, why keep that man's name secret? And it's obvious the real secret they've been trying to keep all these decades is the heavy hand that Israel had played in the assassination of Kennedy. Now, of course, we don't know because we haven't had a full investigation and a full trial, and we're probably never going to have those things. But if you're an investigator, let's say you're a police investigator, you look at, as what pointed out Jen earlier mentioned, who had a motive? If somebody dies, you're looking around saying, well, who benefited from this guy dying?
And on that note, let's continue the video.
1963, Kennedy wrote his strongest letter yet. 2 weeks later, Ben-Gurion abruptly resigned. Meanwhile, Kennedy was battling other powerful forces. After the CIA's failed Bay of Pigs invasion in April 1961, Kennedy told a top official he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces. He fired CIA Director Allen Dulles. And on September 12, 1962, at Rice University, Kennedy delivered his famous moon speech. We choose to go to the moon in this decade not because it is easy, but because it is hard. The world was changing, and Kennedy was at the center. November 22, 1963, Dallas, Texas. Kennedy was assassinated. Lyndon Johnson became president. The pressure on Israel's nuclear program quietly disappeared.
There you go. And a lot of people are not aware, as I was not aware until I looked into it, that Lyndon Johnson was a Christian Zionist from a Christian Zionist family. His aunt, I believe, was the head of the Zionists of America branch for her region of Texas. How can we have lived so long and read so much history and not known of this man's ideological background? And of course, you mentioned the murder of the naval personnel on that ship, the USS Liberty, and Johnson just sat back and said, "Fine, we're fine with it. We're not going to make a big deal about it." And he's also the one who basically let Israel develop the nuclear weapons. In addition to JFK going after the nuclear weapons program, he tasked his brother Robert F. Kennedy with going after the failure of Zionist influence groups to legally register. And that's another area that Johnson just couldn't care less, let it go by. And then that became the standard for all presidents following them. So yeah, it greatly benefited Israel that both Kennedy brothers were gone. And one thing LBJ did, the U.S. had given what they call defensive weapons to Israel. Of course, that's, what's a defensive weapon? But it was Johnson that gave full bore offensive weapons to an enormous degree. I mean, he completely changed the U.S.-Israel relationship regarding military aid dramatically, radically. So he was the best thing. He was the best thing that ever could have happened to Israel.
I definitely agree. And the more I've studied LBJ, the more I question who was the worst president of the 20th century. Was it Woodrow Wilson or was it LBJ? It really is 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Although I would definitely say that FDR does not get enough criticism for some of the things that he did, in particular when it came to the gold standard, and that's a whole other story. But the one thing that I recognize throughout history is that when you get close to greatness, like we did with JFK, like we did with Teddy Roosevelt, you find yourself on the downside of what the empire can present to you when the people get a little too excited about living in a prosperous nation like this. You go from somebody like Teddy Roosevelt, who would have been the president in 1912 if the Republicans didn't rig that primary. Look into that story. And you end up with Woodrow Wilson. And then you look at JFK in what every story that I've ever read regarding 64 was that Johnson was going to be dropped from the ticket. He had tons of scandals attached to his name that likely would have, forget the fact that he had a hired professional hitman, which no one even denies to this day. There were scandals that were so insane regarding like land deals in Texas, among other things, that made him a $100 millionaire in 1969 when he left office. So you can imagine how much that's worth today, probably at least somewhere close to $500 million, if not more. He was in a lot of trouble. He had the motive. He had the psychopathy to do it. So it really doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I'm wondering if you have an opinion about this because, Oliver Stone has been on our show and I think he does really great work, but it does appear that the topic of Israel, when it comes to JFK, is one that very few people want to touch. Why do you think that is?
Well, I'm not in the JFK assassination research business. I make a living in a different way. This is a extracurricular activity for me. So I just say whatever I think is true. But if you're in the business, you've got to conform to the business demands. And I have a feeling if you look into the various the companies that publish a lot of the books on JFK assassination, you'll find it's possible they're owned by people that don't necessarily want Israel to be put in a bad light. And then you look at the conferences and so on. So a few people can make a living being JFK assassination scholars and lecturing and writing books and appearing at conferences and so on. And as our friend Wally pointed out, at least as far as Reddit's concerned, but I have a feeling it spreads way beyond Reddit. If you bring up any connection between Israel and the JFK assassination, you are uninvited, disinvited, unwelcome. Your books won't be published. So I think that's why, and it wouldn't be hard to do. You need to take over a few publishing companies. You need to be in control of a few conferences, and you can lock anybody out. I mean, Wally's certainly, I guarantee Wally is never going to, we were on together a few weeks ago, right. And great researcher, by the way. He's the one that found out that Rabin was actually in Dallas in November of 1963.
No surprise.
Yeah.
The one thing I've learned over the last few years, especially when we really started making a conscious decision in terms of how we were going to go forward politically, that we were going to just speak truth to power, no matter what the consequences are. What I have come to terms with is that nothing surprises me anymore. Which is why when I hear the stories about the Epstein files, for example, none of that surprises me, because I see human behavior. I've been around certain types of people where I can say, yeah, they're definitely capable. I mean, there are things that people say, actions that people do. Jen has said that at one time or another, almost every woman is going to endure some form of sexual misconduct on their behalf, whether emotionally, verbally, physically, in many cases. And to hear these stories coming out now about what goes on behind the scenes in the highest levels of society, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, LBJ, he was the Trump of his day. He was extremely brazen in terms of how he did business. He really didn't hide anything. And I would like to believe that when it comes to where we are now in terms of the modern era, in terms of what just happened, and we're going to get to that in a minute, I really do believe that the only reason why this was allowed to become part of the dustbin of history, so to speak, in terms of any type of reconciliation for his assassination, what ultimately resulted as in their years thereafter, is because it was in a non-information age. And so much of the media really was controlled by a handful of major publications, particularly major newspapers. Today, which is also why it's such a big deal, seeing what's happening in real time with a social media platform like TikTok and how they have completely shut down any form of, the basic town hall conversation regarding an issue like Israel. Now, we're thankful for an organization, or the gentleman, Palestinian from Australia, who came up with the Upscrolled app. But you know what? In real time, they will show you what they will do to silence people. And there are so many outstanding stories regarding why LBJ had a direct hand in JFK's assassination that doesn't get talked about today. Even now, they do everything they can to suppress it. But I do believe my own two eyes, and I believe something as sinister as the wink between him and the congressman right after he was sworn in. You can't ignore this. Not when the empire's collapsing. When the empire's collapsing, that's when people start to ask questions. They start looking for answers. What's going on here? Why is this happening? Well, I believe that this nation's been on a downward trajectory since November 22nd, 1963. That's my belief. And I'm not going to change how I feel about that. We'll finish this out.
Israel's nuclear program quietly disappeared. By the late 1960s, Israel became a nuclear power. But on July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon.
Are we sure about that? Jen, I know this one's one of your favorites.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out why we haven't been able to do it again since. And we have better computers, right? I'm trying to figure out how they broadcast live from the moon all the way to the planet Earth. I mean, they had some amazing technology, which apparently they've lost since then. So I don't know. There's too many more important things to look into, but that one's sketchy as hell. The favorite thing is that they only allowed news people to watch the footage as it was broadcast through a black and white television. They couldn't see the actual stream. It had to they all had to stand around this black and white television. And unfortunately, all that footage disappeared.
My theory has always been very simple about the moon landing or lack thereof. There is no denying who got the satellite into space first, and that was the Soviet Union. When Sputnik got up there, the US, knowing that this could cause them to lose the Cold War, they had to come up with something. And while I think, without question, that JFK's intentions were absolutely pure of mind, body, and soul, that he really did. We chose to go to the moon because he really did believe that. But of course, he was dead 6 years prior to when it actually happened. Now, my belief is that it was done specifically because they were just trying to deal with the Soviet Union. It had nothing at all to do with whether they could walk on the moon. That's all.
Well, also, remember the Vietnam War was going on, and boy, did they need a distraction from that, because I lived through that. I was just a kid, but I remember how it felt and what was going on, and they needed a distraction. So I think that might have been another reason too.
Oh, absolutely.
Bread and circuses.
Well, it also makes you wonder the validity behind why things went wrong the way they did with Apollo 13, which was really that was sort of like the stop point to say, okay, so space exploration is dead now, but yet they magically made it back to Earth, which I've always found interesting. And that's not to say that they were not in danger. I'm sure that they were. But does that mean that perhaps they were sent into space knowing that that was what was going to happen? This is why, like I said, nothing surprises me at all. And what doesn't surprise me is that I am a believer, and there is no question, Charlie Kirk's assassination is the biggest political assassination. It's not the biggest attempted political assassination since JFK, but it is the biggest political assassination in the United States since JFK. When you consider the impact that Charlie Kirk has had on the political arena over the past decade plus, assassinating Charlie Kirk would have been the equivalent of assassinating Billy Graham in the 1980s. To me, that's basically the political equivalent in terms of the impact. When you think about how impactful Billy Graham was to the GOP for several decades and the influence he had over the Christian vote, you would think that somebody like Charlie Kirk and the impact he had through Turning Point USA is something that would rival that if people were truly to understand why the impact was so big, regardless of whether you like Charlie Kirk or not. And I was no fan of his. But you also have to recognize, they say you recognize game. Well, I am recognizing game. And I'm sure you would agree, at least to an extent, that the biggest political assassination in the United States since JFK was Charlie Kirk.
It's huge, and it is definitely connected to Israel. That one we have no question about. I did a show with Sabi Sabs. I don't know if you know her. She has a great
friend of the show. She's good people.
And I was on 4 days after the assassination, and turned out to be her most popular show ever. And I didn't know a whole lot about Charlie Kirk, but I know a whole lot about how the world works. I think a little bit, at least. And so a lot of the things that I'm going to say now, I said way back then, but now there's a solid factual foundation for them. People, first of all, we have to get over our bias against Charlie Kirk. You know, you're not a fan. I'm not a fan. I'm sure a lot of listeners to this program are not fans. But
he was a hell of a talent. I'm not going to say that.
Talented.
Yeah,
yeah,
exceptionally talented. He was an exceptional orator. He had a way of commanding an audience. That's good. He had an exceptional way of commanding an audience that you have to respect. And he was an exceptionally tall individual who was 6'5". And when you can command a room like that, you got to respect it. Like, whether you like it or not, he had an impact. So no one gets assassinated unless they're causing a problem. And he was
exactly. So whether you liked him or loathed him or loved him, you know, that's really not the point. The point is the one that you just made. This was a very important person politically in the United States, and his skill as a on stage, he had super star quality. And the thing that I pointed out on the Sabi Sab show is that this is overlooked too often. He quote started Turning Point USA when he was 18, which is a falsehood. He didn't start it when he was 18. An adult who'd been around the block more than once founded Turning Point USA and brought Charlie in as the talent, because, as you pointed out, you know, it's a sort of a thing that you're born with. You can train and get good at, but there are just certain people that are just really good. Like Obama was one of them. Clinton was one of them. You know, they're just good in front of a camera. And Charlie Kirk at 18.
Believe me, I'm very good in front of the camera.
Yeah. So it's a gift. And this fellow in Chicago recognized it and built this whole organization around Charlie Kirk. And it was originally a Tea Party spinoff, and it was a conservative reformist movement. You know, let's get rid of the fake. Their idea was, let's get rid of the fake conservatives and do real conservative stuff. And we've got to go after the youth. And here's a guy that can reach the youth, and let's put him on the road, and so on. The other thing that people need to know about Charlie Kirk is that, you know, when they think of people like Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson, who have, you know, big platforms and are known by millions, they are a drop in the bucket compared to the power he had. He had his organization. We need to differentiate between him and that organization. There were roughly 600 employees of Turning Point USA and all its various.
Oh yeah.
I'm a businessman, I confess, you know, and so I know what it's like to have to pay you got to pay people every week, you know, like you can't say, I'll catch you next month, you know, and to have 600 employees is a significant enterprise. So this was not a natural, spontaneous, organic thing. He was charming. He was amazing on stage, but he didn't get there on his own, and he didn't even run the organization. And we know that because if you're on a private jet, which is how these guys traveled, every night, going to the next place and the next place and the next place, you're not sitting down with the CFO. You're not talking with your banker. You're not talking with your CEO.
I mean, in many ways, it is like being a rock star, where you really do not have a moment to breathe. And when you're on tour, if you will, like going on these college tours, you know, you have an assignment, and it is something where there's a certain level of responsibility that you have to conduct. And I do believe in his mind, he was in control of the organization. But the more things started to evolve after October 7th, it became clear that he wasn't in charge. He, in fact, probably didn't really know where the money was coming and going, which is why you have so many suspicious characters in the fold, not just Erika Kirk, but also people like Tyler Boyer, people like Mr. McCoy. There is something to be said for a whole bunch of, let's just say operatives surrounding Caesar, if you will. And the next thing you know, when he thinks that he's the one who's really in control, they show him, no, you never really were. Sorry to break it to you. But you have a choice. You can continue going on just the way things are, or you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. Which one do you want? And he's like, oh, I'm going to get into trouble. And sure enough, he did. And that's why we're going to go through this. We're going to stop and go. But friend of the show, James Lee, in conjunction with a handful of other people, put together this nice compilation. It's a long video that I cut down to a little over 5 minutes, but I think it more or less crystallizes exactly how we got to where we're at.
Our founder, Jack Roser, and myself have Charlie Kirk with us, and Charlie Kirk is a young man from Turning Point. He's the founder of the organization.
When Charlie Kirk founded Turning Point USA with businessman Bill Montgomery in 2012 as a senior in high school, the mission was very clear. Economic libertarianism, small government, low taxes, typical Tea Party type messaging.
Graduate from high school this coming June, we're handed a diploma. That's also an invoice for hundreds of thousands of dollars that my generation's gonna have to pay off through interest, high taxes, and a stagnant economy.
But something happened between the years of 2018 and 2019.
The summer of 2018, it's a very important summer in Charlie Kirk's life. That's the summer he met his future wife, the former Erika Franzweh. The following year, the year that began after he met Erika, the list of officers, directors, and key employees listed on TPUSA's Form 990 exploded. So too did the revenue and expenses.
If we examine Turning Point's IRS 990 filings, we see a massive jump in the organization's revenue, almost 3 times, jumping from approximately $10.8 million in 2018 to nearly $29 million in 2019. Charlie Kirk goes from making about $80,000 a year in a relatively still small organization with just 3 officers to over $290,000 a year and a massive expansion in the organization's leadership, with the likes of Tyler Boyer and Stacey Sheridan joining the organization at this time. Shortly thereafter, the organization's economic libertarian message was gradually phased out until it ultimately disappeared in favor of Judeo-Christian nationalism.
Now, if you ask me, this is one of the more significant developments of this particular story. I look back upon where Turning Point USA, when it first came out, and clearly there was a desire to move in the direction of right-wing populism in response to President Obama. And the person who had the most going for them back then, it was Ron Paul. And Ron Paul was really knocking it out of the park in many respects. And ultimately, the neocons booted him from any type of a established baseline where they could grow some type of a movement within the party. You could call it the Tea Party, but the fact of the matter is, it was a movement where you had a very substantial anti-war sentiment that was growing in the right-wing circles. Enter this growing faction, which becomes Christian nationalism, but it's really evangelism, pro-Israel evangelism for the most part. Everything changes. Now, whether or not Charlie had the type of control to say, I don't really want to go in this direction. I think they're also giving a little too much credit to the idea that Erika Kirk is responsible for this happening. I don't know. What do you think? Because I can see, and remembering now that the evolution of Turning Point USA is very real. It didn't happen overnight, but it definitely happened over time for sure.
Gotcha. Well, definite evolution happened. And I want to go back to the idea of a young man. I mean, he was 32 when he died, being thrust into the limelight with this 600-person company running everything. He probably knew very little about what was going on, other than the fact, hey, I've got to be in Orlando today, and Annapolis tomorrow, or whatever his tour issue was. And then he had his podcast, which, as you know, takes a lot of time. So he was fully booked. I think, and I've heard Candace Owens refer to this, and it makes a lot of sense. I can envision this. He wanted to reach more people, and somebody made the point to him about the reality that there is a huge Christian marketplace out there. It's massive. If you're not in that marketplace, you're not aware of it. But if you look around, there are Christian publishing companies, Christian filmmaking companies, lots of Christian TV. I mean, it is a mega business, and they have a direct line to lots and lots of people. So it's possible that they said to him, Charlie, here's a way we can get the message out to even more people if we connect with all these faith groups. And if you present it that way, it sounds pretty harmless.
Yeah.
Except these faith people, these professional, Religion Inc. people, they're not harmless at all. I mean, they're some of the most gangster people that have ever walked the earth. In fact, if people want to get an education on this, there was a film that won the Academy Award in 1973 for Best Documentary called Marjoe, Margoe. And it's about a guy who was raised as a little junior preacher, and he'd go out on the circuit. Oh, it's the other thing you need to know about this Christian business is it's business. They bring in lots of money. I mean, imagine an industry where you don't have to do anything you don't have to make a product. You don't have to render a service. No. You just tell people, hey, I represent God. Give me your money. And I'll help you out.
And it actually is pretty funny when you see some of the more lowbrow type of pastors that are out there wearing all the bling and being like, hey, I got to be rich in order for you to get into heaven. I'm thinking they really are testing the waters to see how far they can take this before the people in the congregation start saying, really? Is that what God's will is all about? No, it's not.
Well, in creating cults, which is what a lot of these organizations really are, they don't really care if what they're saying makes any rational sense or not. In fact, the less sense it makes, the better. They just spew it out there, and they see who sticks around. And the people who stick around are hooked. And now they've got frankly, they're suckers. And if you watch this documentary about this fellow Marjoe, again, he started out as a baby preacher. His parents put him on the circuit. He quit when he was a teenager and tried to become an actor. And then some filmmakers said, Marjoe, tell us about your days as a traveling preacher. And he said, I'll do more than that. I'll go back out on the road and show you how I did it. And he literally explained, he'll go on the stage and he'll do his routine. It's show business. It's show business with a spiritual dimension to it. And it's highly lucrative. And there are tens of millions of Americans hooked into it.
Well, you also have to remember, depending on where in the United States that you come from, and remember, we've been talking about this at great length, Jewish Zionism is predominantly in the wealthy coastline city areas, particularly New York, Miami, Los Angeles, San Francisco, places like that, Chicago, etc. Christian evangelism, Christian Zionism is very popular in the South, the Deep South in particular, and the Heartland. And what do these regions have in common? There's not a lot of economic infrastructure there. The church becomes the center, not just of town, but of your life. Your entire life is wrapped up in this. And when you have these grifting sons of bitches that seize on, this is why I've always had more sympathy for conservatives than liberals when it comes to political naivete, because they're not well read. They're not brought up in communities where education is emphasized or even funded well, for that matter. These are congregates for a political economic system that is designed to treat them as pawns in the grand scheme of the machine. And that's who they are. These people that are here, they're not bad people. They're extremely misguided, And many of them are hate-filled because that's what's instilled in them from the time that they're young. But they're doing what they think they need to do because they believe if they don't, they're going to burn in hell for eternity when they die. So you can understand how this all happens and how the manipulation with the Jewish Zionists, again, cliche as it may sound, the Jewish Zionists provide the money, the Christian Zionists provide the flock. And that's how you have this unholy alliance that has been going on for over 3 generations. It is imperative that we stop it now. And I believe that we are on the cusp of doing so because I think things like the Charlie Kirk assassination have led to so many people questioning the validity of what this is all about. There's nothing wrong with believing in God, but if you believe in this, you're a sucker. It's really that simple as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, they're really taking advantage of people. You know, people have a desire for community. They do have a desire for transcendence, to believe there's something bigger than themselves. I mean, that's all natural, normal human desire. And these people are absolutely abusing, and they're good at it. You know, there are courses. There are actually courses that preachers can take to learn specifically the specific techniques of how to whip up an audience to the point where they're in a frenzy of just, you know, basically throwing money into the basket and on the stage. I mean, it's a training. Like this is not some spontaneous. It's goodwill, and they all believe in Jesus, and they're trying, you know, the pastors. No, it's a business for them, and they take the business side extremely seriously. And I think that was, and I think Candace Owens even said this a while back. That's where Charlie signed his death warrant when he invited these vipers into his organization. And what happened is, and again, you're a guy on the road, you're doing these shows. The shows are exhausting. You don't have time to start looking at every single operational detail. Someone would come and say, hey, you should bring this guy on. He's really good, you know, and the fellow's charming. Now you got that guy on. You think he's got your back. Hey, bring this guy on and bring this guy on. Next thing you know, you're surrounded. This can happen so easily in a business.
Yes,
it happens every day.
And that's why Texas in particular is such a breeding ground for this, because you have the 3 biggest evangelical Zionist pastors in the United States: Joel Osteen in Houston, Kenneth Copeland in Dallas, and John Hagee in San Antonio. So we will continue, but there's no question that this tie-in, it's not just Israel for the sake of Israel. This is a lot of money and a lot of power, period.
Judeo-Christian nationalism, with a heavy emphasis placed on the importance of Christian support for the state of Israel. Now, at this point, I think we all know what changed in Charlie's life between the years of 2018 and 2019. And we can either say everything that transpired afterwards was just a big old coincidence, or maybe the dots do all connect.
You're sitting in that chair for a reason. That exact chair. That person that's sitting right next to you was meant to sit right next to you. I will never forget the time I was in Israel with my husband. Well, that was the second time, but the first time with my mother on a pilgrimage. And I was standing in the ticket line. And I remember looking behind me, and in the snake of the ticket line was a guy who looked very familiar. I had no idea who he was. And I told my mom, this guy looks so familiar. And as a typical mother, she said, go and say hi. No. We were late for our flight, and I'm not going to come off like a crazy person that's just weird. That ended up being Charlie.
After their quote-unquote chance meeting in Israel, Erika Franzwey and Charlie Kirk would officially start dating in 2019. They became engaged in December of 2020, and they got married in 2021. And who is this Erika Franzwey? Well, we don't really know. Is she a pageant queen? Maybe a wannabe reality TV star? Perhaps a philanthropist with a project gone wrong? An expert on EMPs? A cringe MAGA model? Could she have been Charlie's handler?
That's your answer.
Well, and here's another reality too. You're 30, I don't know when he guess he married her when he was in his late 20s. Again, you're working 18 hours a day. When do you have a chance to meet anybody and have a normal social life, right? And so they put this woman in front of him, and, you know, he thinks, wow, I lucked out here. And he marries her. And if
Well,
anybody's,
I've often said, and no disrespect to Charlie, but he probably had a type, and they did what they had to do to put this in front of him. And from his perspective, he was clearly punching above his weight class. And so, yeah, there's countless stories throughout history of men losing everything because they allowed the smaller head to dictate what the bigger head should have been thinking. And that's it. It's as tale as old as time. That's why they always say, what's the oldest profession? There's a reason. So again, we're only outsiders looking in, presuming what really went down. But on the surface, it does look like a honey trap operation.
boys can be very dumb. Absolutely.
Jen always likes to needle us for being simple-minded when it comes to things like sex. So unfortunately,
Well, you want to believe, I mean, and this is used in intelligence work all the time, guys in a bar and all alone, and it happens to be an attractive woman there, and she starts talking to him. It never occurs to him that this is very unusual.
No, I mean, Ken,
You're not that good looking, dude.
Even if you go back to stories following D-Day in 1944, listen, Germany has some of the most beautiful women in the world, and it was used against American soldiers. The women would seduce these soldiers, and they were carrying things like syphilis and gonorrhea. Yeah. And these men got sick and even died as a result. Why? Because they're not thinking straight. So when everything seems all too good, when things seem all too perfect, perhaps in Charlie's eyes, gets married, he has 2 kids, he's making a lot of money, he's on top of the world in November of 2024. He, as much as anybody, is responsible for Trump winning in the White House again. I mean, think about it. I think people still don't understand, regardless of whether you think Kamala Harris is a shitty candidate or not, and my God, is she shitty.
Right.
But she had a lot more money, just like Hillary did, than Trump had. And as a result, money very often wins at the end of the day, unless you have an incredible operation like a Turning Point USA to combat that type of financial influence. So to say that Charlie Kirk was really in an incredible position of influence and power in November of 24, he would be dead less than 10 months later. So it really goes to show you how fast these things can change. And in many cases, like you said, when you have so much going on, you don't necessarily have the time to do your due diligence, to make sure that the house is not on fire. And it's pretty clear to me that he had no clue what the hell was going on until the end, until the AmFest event with Dave Smith, which kind of touched off the whole point. The private conversations he was having with Candace, who was probably telling him the call is coming from, as Jen likes to say, the call is coming from inside the house. And it's the truth. Jen Tucky. It's a good point. All right, let's keep going.
Could she have been Charlie's handler? Yeah, I said it. Could Erika Kirk have been an intelligence asset to keep Charlie in line, to make sure that he sticks to the script? And I think given everything that's happened since September 10th, 2025, this is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question to ask. But in terms of facts, in 2021, just months before the collapse of the Unification Church in Japan, TPUSA launched TPUSA Faith, an organization dedicated to, quote, empowering Christians to put their faith into action, led by megachurch pastor Rob McCoy.
Now, you want to talk about a corrupt son of a bitch of the worst kind? Now watch how he acts.
We serve you, Almighty God.
우리는 하나님 당신을 섬깁니다.
Let God be true and every man a liar. Let God be true. Sorry. Just say, let God be true.
Could McCoy have been tasked to build TPUSA Faith into a, quote, shadow church of sorts? A network of politically active congregations across the entire world that could function very much like the Unification Church did in Japan for many, many decades in service of the land belonging to God's chosen people?
2006, I visited Israel for the first time, and now it's been over 30 times. I stand with them. I stand with your sovereignty. And yes, I believe that the Jews are God's chosen people. I have come to love the nation.
And would Charlie, the face of this organization, someone who in the final months of his life, if I might remind you, began to very publicly question our support for the state of Israel, be willing to play ball? Just 2 weeks before his death, of all the places to visit in the world, Charlie Kirk found himself right here in Tokyo, Japan. The official itinerary listed meetings with the Sansaito, a minor Japanese nationalist party. But what was he really here to do? Was he being offered some kind of deal, $250 million of funding, as some have reported, to run perhaps the most powerful political machine in the West? One that requires total allegiance and unconditional loyalty to the cause?
Now, I got to be honest, when I see this photograph, it doesn't look real. And even if it was, the one thing that I've noticed that I think you probably have too, you see the pro-Israel accounts constantly trying to have revisionist history about Charlie's position on Israel by the time of his assassination. There was a time in which Charlie spoke very highly of Israel, but then eventually he didn't. And he especially didn't right up until his death. When Israel and their operatives go down that road, all they do is make themselves look that much more guilty. That's my opinion. What do you think?
Well, you know, if the official Israeli line is that the Kennedys were great friends of Israel. There's books written about that. So yeah, they're very good at manipulating history.
They got that one photo of RFK with the yarmulke on, and they've been running with that forever.
Yeah. Yeah, well, obviously they're rewriting history because I think, Kennedy wasn't antagonistic to Israel, and there's no need necessarily to be antagonistic to Israel, but you're allowed to call them on their criminal behavior. That's not being anti-Israel or anti-Jewish, you know. And again, this guy got killed when he was 32. So all through his 20s, he might not have had any kind of education as to what was really going on over there. But here's the key, and you pointed this out, he finally did. And when he did, it seemed pretty clear that he opened the gates. I mean, telling Tucker Carlson right before he went on stage, before Tucker Carlson went on stage, go hard. And he knew exactly what he was telling Tucker Carlson to do. He was a man of conscience and imperfect, you know, but they had to get rid of him. They absolutely had to get rid of him. There's two pillars holding up the genocidal state. One of them, of course, is I call them the country club Jews. You know, if you want to stay in the economic country club with fellow country club Jews, you better not have anything negative to say about Israel, and you better be sending checks to Israel all the time, or you're out of that game. And it's a very lucrative game. Let's face it. You know, business is a lot about networks, and you certainly want to be in a good network, and you don't want to be thrown out. All right, but those guys, Israel already controls. The other pillar that's absolutely essential are the Christian Zionists, the ill-informed, poorly educated people that somehow believe God told them to let Israel do whatever Israel wants to do, and we're supposed to support it. That's a source of money, but it's also a source of political support. I think there are a lot of congressmen, not only are they getting bribed by Israel, but they're also getting a lot of pressure from their constituents, because their constituents literally believe that we're supposed to let Israel do whatever Israel wants to do. So to have Charlie Kirk, who and you pointed this out at the beginning of the call, this was one of the most important people politically in the United States, certainly in his generation. I don't think there was anyone that holds a candle to him. And he had a direct line to the youth, who are rightfully frustrated with the direction the country's going in. I mean, nobody can afford a house. A lot of people can barely afford an apartment. The economy's stagnant. He was speaking to that. the desire to have a family, desire to have kids, all these natural things that his generation is having a really hard time doing because of our economic shit show that we've got going on, thanks to all the corruption.
Couldn't have said it better. And
and so he was really connecting on that level. And then they put him into this turning point faith deal. And now he's combining Christian morals with libertine ethics, and it became a bit of a soup. And then then the attack on Gaza, and he was on, who's that crazy Iranian guy or Persian? I think he's Persian. He's got a show out in LA. He's moved to Texas, and he's very right wing. And anyway, he had Charlie Kirk on just a few days after the Gaza incident. And Charlie Kirk said, I've been to Israel, and it only takes a helicopter.
You're talking about Patrick Bet-David.
Yeah. And so,
excuse me, time out. Patrick Bet, Star of David. I forgot.
Right. And he's all, all in.
And Jen comes from the same neighborhood that Adam Sosnick comes from. Now, you want to talk about somebody who has a AIPAC handler? Patrick Bet-David's AIPAC handler is Adam Sosnick.
Oh, how do you like that? Okay.
Point blank. Period. Couldn't be more obvious. But yeah, I think that this is something where they call it the noticing. That's the term that's being used. The noticing. People are noticing things that perhaps that was right in front of them all along for a very long time, but now they're starting to understand how the pieces fit on the puzzle board. Now, once that starts happening, there's no going back. Once you see it, you will not unsee it. So let's finish.
Oh, sorry.
No. Please finish your thought.
It sounds like they gave him a chance because the day before somebody killed him, he had a long talk with a rabbi on the telephone. And this is where Erika Kirk, she's a highly suspicious person. I don't think she has the intelligence to.
She is an absolutely atrocious actress.
Atrocious. Oh my God.
She can't hide anything.
Is there anything she's ever said that has turned out to be true ever about anything?
It has nothing to do with that. What it has to do with is whether or not you have some form of plausible belief that what they're saying has any merit to at least take into consideration. The moment that she posted that video of her in front of his casket was the moment I knew that this was all a ruse. I got I had like an inkling that it was, because no one like that gets assassinated unless there's something much more higher level, which of course takes time to, kind of really dig into, to be honest. But when she did that video, my first instinct was to say, oh, he was assassinated. Like, this wasn't a random shooting. This was a killing. This was he's got to go.
Yeah, he's got to go.
More obvious.
And to connect this to Kennedy, when they said, well, it was this lone guy up in the Texas depository and he got this shot off, and then, hey, that's it. We're done. We don't have to look at it anymore. This is literally the same playbook. And I know a little bit about guns, and if you're hit with that kind of a caliber, you're going to explode. You're not. Yeah, it's horrifying.
30-06, and again, I'm a novice when it comes to weaponry. But what I will say is this: if a 30-06 with a man with a frail frame like he has, if he took that in the throat, his head's falling off.
It's true. It's not exaggeration. The head's gone. The head will be gone. And then the whole thing of the guy jumping off the roof, which looked, that was one hell of a jump, whoever did that.
You know what's even more interesting is if you look at, and remember, why are we even talking about this? What is the reason we even talked about JFK's assassination in the first place? Because some guy decided to show up at the grassy knoll with an amateur video camera and filmed it. And if it wasn't for that, no one would have talked about it. Abraham Zapruder changed history forever. All of the videos that showed that this was an inside job came from amateur video. It came amateur video when you saw I don't know if it was Tyler Boyer, dive across the table as soon as he was shot. He knew to grab the camera. It's like, for the love of God, what are you looking at? This was an assassination, period. So let's finish this out, and we're going to tie it all together.
Requires total allegiance and unconditional loyalty to the cause, But of course, all of that is just speculation. The only thing that we know for sure is that less than a week after his visit to Japan, he was dead.
I'm going to give you some credit. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
The similarities between the two assassinations are pretty real. The covering up of the crime scene, the lone assassin, no accomplices, any of the people that have reasonable suspicion have not even been brought in for questioning, much less indictments.
Right.
Open and shut case, right?
Yeah, no motivation, no real motivation.
No.
The logistics were impossible, and that's the other parallel. The behavior of the FBI. I mean, it was J. Edgar Hoover back then, but now it's this lunatic Kash Patel doing a non-investigation. In fact, doing exactly what they did during the Kennedy assassination, which is when they talked to witnesses, they told a lot of witnesses to shut up. We don't want to hear this.
Echoes. You heard echoes.
And no autopsy. I mean, come on, man.
Well, not only that, but you have doctors from Parkland that even said, hey, I don't care what they're telling you. The shot came from the front.
Right.
The back of his brain was blown out of his skull. And when I hear people try to come up with these excuses, it's like, I also believe that there is a portion of the population that just cannot accept what the reality is about the United States and the people who lead it. I've often said, I love my country. I hate who runs it.
Right.
And I always have. There's something very special about the United States. I was just at Yosemite National Park in the wilderness of Northern California. I got to tell you, I mean, I've been to some of the most amazing places. And I've always said, one of the reasons why, Teddy is my favorite president is because he started the U.S. National Park System. And I believe there's 64, 65 of them around the country. I mean, Yosemite is incredible, absolutely incredible. And the reason why it became a national park system is because he went to Yosemite and saw the grizzly giant. Today, that tree, which I just posted on my social media, it's 2,800 years old. I mean, it really is incredible when you think about it. And we are just passing through history. We have an opportunity to make real change right now. Are we going to do it? So I ask you, we kind of tie it all together. The similarities between JFK's killing and Charlie's killing. Granted, JFK's was substantially bigger. However, to say that there isn't diametrically consistent political, economic, and social impacts as a result of these assassinations, and the fact that there are direct ties to Israel in both cases, I believe that Israel is going to fall. How they fall, I don't know. But I don't believe that they will ever be able to reconcile what they've done, not just from October 7th on, but from the fact that because of October 7th, you now have tens of millions of people in this country who are looking into Israel's history. And what they're finding, they don't like what they see. They're never going to come back from it. How long do you think it'll be, assuming you agree, before Israel is put to bed for good?
Well, I want to say this. Luckily, there's a whole rest of the world out there too. And we saw at the Olympics, Israel is, yeah, exactly. And,
I had to put, I did a viral clip on this channel with the booing. I put it out there. We had to bleep out the booing.
You're kidding?
No, I'm not kidding.
Yeah, so that shows how the
booing. NBC won't let you play booing. That's considered antiseptic. Get it?
Right. Yeah, the timing is, when it will happen. But I mean, they've lost the rest of the world. They still have a hold on the United States. I don't know And that's their key. That's their key asset. When that goes, it's all gone. But the rest of the world, except for, United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and all these countries that are willing to let
a
Israel.
handful of satellite states. There's really nothing.
But we did see South Africa. That no one thought that was going to happen, and that eventually, and of course, the last two countries on earth to support the brutal. We use these technical terms, apartheid. It was brutal on people. The last two countries in the world to support apartheid, South Africa, were Israel and the United States. I don't know the timing. And that leg of Christian support has got to be kicked out from under. And that brings us full circle why they had to kill Charlie Kirk, because he was bringing that day much, much closer. If he had gone now, why did they kill him on the first appearance of the tour? Because if he had started talking at the first appearance and then got killed, that would have been a mess. So they had to take him out before he went on tour.
He didn't have an opportunity to put a message out there that was allowed to permeate in any way. And that's why, like I said, when the conversation happened at AmFest between Dave Smith and Lil Ben Shapiro's Timu knockoff, Josh Hammer, that's when you knew that something big was happening, because immediately after that, they flew him out to the Hamptons and say, "You're not doing that shit. Like, this is not allowed." And he was basically telling them, "Bring it on. I've made my peace."
I'm sorry. People often want to know, hey, what can we do? What can we do? Well, there's this media. Luckily, thank God for the internet. This channel, other channels, but this channel right now, because we're on it right now. Yeah. And what people can do is educate themselves and support the good channels. And, the easiest way, of course, to support a channel is just hit that thumbs up button. It's so easy. You just take your mouse and just boom, and it makes a world of difference. Everybody does their part, whatever their part is. And being an informed, intelligent person is part of it, but then also supporting the people that are going through the effort to keep these channels open. There aren't a lot of channels like this. If you watch the channels that you watch, it's easy to think that there's a lot of them and they're easy to run and they're all thriving and they're growing. No, we're under the gun. Nobody in the mainstream is helping these channels. But you can as a viewer. So I want to recommend everybody, the minimum, give it a thumbs up.
I want to thank you again, as always, for coming on. You are an excellent guest. As I said, your book is one of my favorites. It kind of tied everything together. It just really made sense. And part of the reason why there has been this code of silence surrounding the assassinations for so long is because we now know why. We now know why perhaps Oliver Stone never touched Israel when it came to JFK, which is still a phenomenal movie, and there's still a lot of truths to it. But the thing about truth is that if you're going to tell the truth, you have to go all the way. You cannot stop at any point in the road and say, well, we've gone far enough, let somebody else pick up the slack. This is why I have a lot of respect, even if I think she is grifting, and perhaps even Tucker is as well. But this is the thing about Candace and the thing about Tucker. They are willing to go where very few other people are willing to go. I think the biggest reason they do what they do is because, A, they are protected, and you can take that as you want, and they have fuck you money. And when you have those two things working in concert, you can do a lot of those things that you want to do. We on this channel are a rare bird because there are not many left populist channels that are willing to go where we choose to go. We have been copyright striked. We have been shadow banned. We've been through all of it. We're not dead yet, but I'm still looking to the day where they finally decide they've had enough of our influence, even though, like I said, at our peaks, we'll get between 500 and 1,000 live viewers, which is still really good, all things considered. I'm not complaining. But I want everyone to recognize what's happening here. And I want them to recognize it before the masses do. We are in a revolutionary change moment. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's happening. It's happening right now. These conversations precipitate that moment. Now, again, will it be a Paul Revere moment, shot heard around the world type situation? I don't know. But I do know that the more people hear this, the more they question the reality that the system is broken beyond repair and the revolution is inevitable. And if we can get there, it will definitely be for the betterment of humanity. And by you writing that book, I can only hope more and more people will pick it up, learn more about why this is such a big deal. And I hope you will continue doing the amazing work that you're doing. And I hope we'll get to chat again real soon.
Well, thanks a lot.
It's great to see you, my friend. Ken McCarthy, guys, links in the description. Remember to pick up your copy of JFK and RFK. How do you say it again? One more time.
Secret battle against Zionist extremism.
Check it out, guys. Appreciate you, my friend. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And I hope you all have enjoyed this conversation so far, because we are just getting started. Links for his books are in the description. So we hope you will go over and check them out. And we also hope that you enjoyed this very enjoyable conversation, very smooth conversation. It's always amazing when we get to talk to him and how it just kind of rolls so smoothly. I will tell you guys, the great noticing is happening. It's happening every moment of every day. Now, I was not aware of this or why this was such a big deal. But for those that are familiar with this particular story coming out of Ohio State University. Now, this was let's just say, when it comes to an attack, I don't generally care very much about what would be considered hot button little stories. There is a gentleman, I want to get his name right before we pull it up, Mr. Perez. I want to say it's Luis Perez. Let's see. So the gentleman's name in question he is an assistant professor. It is Luke Perez. He's an assistant professor at Ohio State University. This is very entertaining.
Whoa!
Ow! Just one more. No. No. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Whoa!
Ow! God! I told you not to put that in my face. I didn't.
Dude, you can't do
yes,
that.
Yes, you did. No,
Dude.
I'm not going to ask you again. Don't touch me. Don't touch me, brother. Who the put your hands on me, sir? You put your hands on me, sir. Oh, God. Damn, dude. You shoved that camera into my face, sir.
That's not.
You shoved that camera into my face, sir. So let's do it again. Let's see if he actually touched him.
Whoa, whoa,
Whoa!
Ow! Just one more. No. No. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Whoa!
Ow! God! I told you not to put that in my face. I didn't.
Dude, you can't do
yes,
that.
Yes, you did. No, I'm not going to ask you again.
Don't
touch me. Don't touch me, brother. Who the put your hands on me,
Dude,
sir?
that's...
You put your hands on me, sir. Oh, God. Damn, dude. You shoved that camera into my face, sir.
That's not... Dude, that's crazy.
No, sir. Are you serious, dude?
I got it.
Did you get that?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You're going to jail, motherfucker. Call the cops. I asked him not to. He did it anyway. That's assault, brother. You're going to jail, bro.
That's crazy.
Who are you? I'm calling the cops. Call the cops, please. Just broke my camera.
That's crazy.
So one has to ask themselves, why would a assistant professor named Luke Perez attack somebody like that, a citizen journalist? Why was he attacked? What would be the motivation to hit somebody like that? Clearly, he had to have been doing something that he didn't like, something that got under his skin, and now we're going to find out exactly what that is. So as it turns out, Ohio State faces lawsuit after faculty member attacks journalist interviewing Gee. You might ask, who is President Gordon Gee? The attorney for the independent journalist attacked by the Ohio State University faculty member while interviewing former President Gordon Gee wants him to be terminated and criminally charged. The attack happened Monday evening at the Smith Lab when the video shows independent journalist Michael Newman asking for one more question and attempting to enter a classroom where Gee was. Assistant Professor Luke Perez accuses Newman of putting the camera in his face, then attempting to slap the equipment out of his hands and rides him to the... I tell you, the way they write this language in defense of the establishment is incredible. Incredible. Even when you see it in real time, they'll figure out a way to massage the truth, to say the least. Perez is an assistant professor for the Salmon P. Chase Center for Civics, Culture, and Society. Not very civil action on his part. The altercation took place following a Profiles in American Leadership class taught by Perez Monday, where Guy was a guest lecturer and took questions in the hallway. The assistant professor got into the path of his camera and struck him, and the video went viral. I think there are 10 to 12 million views at this point. Newman immediately got up and backpedaled in disbelief while the person filming the incident says, hey, you can't do that. He has some neck and facial injuries. Okay, I'm sure he's not injured. And a little like a car accident. He has some whiplash and damage to his equipment. But at the time, I think he was really shocked. One point, one film crew was at the scene, interviewed Dr. Guy, and a second was there recording that interview. When the interview ended, Newman approached the door where Perez moved in front of him. Ratliff said Guy's reaction was unbecoming of a higher education executive who has been working with young people for more than 4 decades. So at the point the interview ended and Mr. Newman wanted to ask a question about student loan debt, there's more to that. That was the question he wanted to ask Dr. Guy, who did not want to answer. Dr. Guy's reaction is pretty appalling for what used to be a university president when he has one of the filmers call his henchmen attacking people. Ratliff said at this point they want Perez to be charged criminally for the attack and fired. Civil claims also being considered if the university fails to take action. The assistant professor allowed his civil rights to be violated, meaning freedom of speech and of the press, and we're looking into all options. So that's all well and good, but as it turns out, there's a little bit more to this that I think people need to understand. Why would he attack him? Why would he get in his face? It turns out, and again, this is my understanding, that there is an Epstein tie-in here, because there was always going to be one. How else could a story like this jump to so much of a larger position? What would possess somebody to say, okay, so what's the tie-in? No one is going to be getting this agitated over being questioned for student loan debt. No, that's not what the real issue was here. This was the real issue. Former OSU President Guy defends Les Wexner amid probe into billionaires' ties to Epstein. Now, what do we know about Les Wexner that keeps coming up? What we know is that Wexner was an incredible funder of the Ohio State University to the tune of $400 million, apparently. That buys you a lot of favors, including the president saying, oh, we're not really concerned about this. And now you can see why. Oh, yeah, because of course he looks like that. Former Ohio State University President Gordon Gee says the effort to remove Ohio billionaire Les Wexner's name from university buildings is cancel culture. Gee went to bat for Wexner, who he calls a friend and a wonderful philanthropist. Gee's time as president overlapped with Wexner's time as chair of the OSU Board of Trustees. Gee spoke about OSU's biggest donor and Ohio's richest man on All Sides with Amy Jurovich Wednesday. Gee is now a consultant for current Ohio State University President Ted Carter. Wexner is being called before Congress in February to testify about his close relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Gee said he thinks Wexner had no idea about what Epstein was doing, even though he was at the island and, well, you know the rest. Does it really surprise you, though? Gee made the comments after being asked about an effort to remove Wexner's name from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center's football complex. The university denied a request to remove Wexner's name on the basis that there was a lack of information for the naming committee to review. The request made by survivors of sexual abuse at the hands of former OSU team doctor Richard Strauss decades ago contained accusations of misconduct related to Strauss and not Wexner. This is the cancel culture gone wild. If you believe that there was even some scintilla, what a nice little thesaurus word, of an issue. Sometimes people just want to go right to DEFCON 2. Why not DEFCON 1? Wexner and Gee also face the threat of subpoenas to testify in the ongoing lawsuit against OSU by Strauss abuse survivors. Ohio State intervened, arguing that Wexner shouldn't have to testify. The only reason that Wexner is not being asked to testify is money and power, and that's it. So you can see in real time, this is why I can't get that agitated about it. This is how the system breaks. You pay off enough money to make sure that no one ever gets in your way. He has been a wonderful philanthropist. Tell me where you haven't heard this recently. The Dow is up to 50,000 points. Why are we wasting time talking about sexual abuse victims and children? The economy's great for the people who run it. It's the same argument. That's why they're protecting him. And that's why it's likely Ohio will not do anything. Look at that sawed-off little prick, Gordon Gee. Protected class. When you cross a protected class, he was going into dorms and meeting freshmen. He walked up to me, put out his hand and said, Gordon Gee, president of the university. And I said, Jennifer Pilchick, student. Interesting. Yeah, I'm sure you got a really interesting vibe back then too. Thankfully, you didn't become a Buckeye. Go Irish. It doesn't matter how powerful you are or how high up the chain you get. At some point, the powers that be will bring you down a peg. They always do. And when we think about, and I'm guilty of this, I'm the first to admit, I am guilty of making fun of Michael Jackson. I did. Oh no, they're coming after me. I'm in a lot of trouble now. Oh no. And it's all done tongue in cheek. It's for laughs. It's for fun. But I never questioned whether Michael Jackson was an abused child and whether or not there were many layers to why he ended up where he did. But I will tell you, I never for a moment stopped to think, well, maybe, just maybe, there's more to than what meets the eye. Perhaps he wasn't a child abuser. Perhaps there was more to this story that we were not made aware of. Now, we're going to get to the unfolding of the story. But Michael wrote a song called Palestine, Don't Cry. Now, I can't play it, even though certain AI has rendered that song. I'd rather not chance our channel getting shut down, but I am going to read the lyrics to you now. Let's see if I could get to the front of this. Palestine, don't cry. So here we go. And I'm not going to do this as a joke. I'm going to do this very seriously. And I want to make sure that it's read properly. See the plains of the days of old, just a century ago, when stories of peace were told, of how Galilee ran through the Jordan River. What remains are cold tales of war, of the death and dying, bombshells are flying, bodies multiplying, see the children crying. What are they fighting for? And the chorus goes, I will pray for you, O Palestine, O Palestine. I will carry you, O Palestine, Palestine. Palestine, come deep in my heart. I'll always love you. Palestine, Don't cry. I will pray for you. O Palestine, O Palestine, O Palestine. God's a place for you, O Palestine. And I believe in you, O Palestine. I will die for you. I will pray for you, O Palestine, O Palestine. I will carry you, O Palestine, Palestine. This song was written, it was recorded, but not released at the end of 1992, early 1993. This, I believe, was the first song that he put together for what was to be his follow-up album to the last major album he released in 1992, Dangerous. You know, when you really think about it, Michael Jackson, for all of his success, only had like 5 albums. He had, well, in terms of a solo career, now that I think about it, he only had 4 albums. He had Off the Wall, he had Thriller, he had Bad, and he had Dangerous. And then everything stopped. It's funny you bring that up. So Michael obviously went through a lot trying to regain his reputation. Rabbi Schmutzy became his spiritual advisor. So when you see these photographs of all of these celebrities that are taken with this dingbat, you have to know that it's basically just another form of blackmail, that you are going to do as you're told. And the dildo salesman is going to make sure that you get your mind right. MJ's dad did destroy his life, like a lot of parents who push their children into a similar career. Why do you think Michael Jackson and Macaulay Culkin were so close? They basically had the same father. If you're into butt play, that's your business. Point is, when you see somebody of incredible prominence who's been taken down several pegs and has now been placed in the position where they have to do everything they can to salvage their reputation, and especially if you insult the wrong community, this is the person that they're going to stick you with. And there's very little you can do about it, unless you want to be completely excommunicated, or dare I say, removed. Again, think about all the people like RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, Sean Penn. I could go on and on. But when they show up arm in arm with Shmuley, well, you know they done fucked up somewhere. And now they have to make amends, repent, and make it right. Check this out. Now, we're going to have to stop and go with this quite a bit. I want you to watch this again very carefully. After his trip to Israel during the Dangerous tour, he came back and made a song about it because he went to Palestine. Sony Records refused to release the song. Actually, it was some very high-profile Jewish Zionists that refused to allow the song to be released, but I digress. Two months later, the first claims of child abuse begin. 2 months. 2 months later, child abuse charges against MJ. The people who conspired against him just happened to be Jewish, the accuser and the psychiatrist of the victim. Now, here's where it gets very, very dirty. His sister Latoya, who couldn't sing, did a press conference in Tel Aviv. She publicly said she believed Michael was a pedo, that he's committed crimes against children. Here's what you probably didn't know. Years later, in 2011, she confessed her husband was abusive and forced her to say those things. Now, I want to get this person's name right, in case anybody is curious. This gentleman's name is Jack Gordon. Now, unfortunately, Jack Gordon's no longer with us, so we can't question him. Now, this part I do want to play. MJ grew tired of the coordinated Zionist attack and started calling them out. Now, you can play these things for 5 seconds before they grab you, but you can hear that he's had enough. He's had enough. When you see somebody completely deteriorate as a human, and that happens in many ways, physically, he obviously decided to mutilate his entire physical makeup. He was a handsome fellow when he was a young guy. But again, he couldn't stop, and he didn't stop. Play a little bit more. I told you to stop doing that, please. Now remember, you can play it in increments of 5 seconds. That's how it works. In order to stay in the music business, he had to apologize, and Rabbi Shmuley became his spiritual advisor. Neverland Ranch gets raided, goes to court to answer new indictments. Jury finds Jackson not guilty after 32 hours deliberation. Anti-Semitic phone rant leaked. Now listen carefully.
I was so tired of it. They start out the most popular person in the world, make a lot of money, big house, cars, and everything, end up with painting a his conspiracy. The Jews do it on purpose.
Now, unfortunately, it becomes a Jew problem when you're surrounded by everybody who is Jewish and is pro-Israel, Zionist, etc. And this is a common practice within the music business. Jackson does not respond publicly. Some link this to frustrations with Sony executives like Tommy Mottola, Italian, whom he accused of exploitation. Tommy Mottola has quite the reputation. Just ask Mariah Carey. The last thing, let's get back to that. The last thing we can hear, damn this thing, come on. The last thing we can hear from MJ is the phone call where he predicts his death. This apparently is from the night before he died.
Maybe a group of people don't want to get rid of me about it. Over the phone. They could shoot me. They could stab me. They could frame me and say I overdosed him with drugs.
The day before he dies, he puts out this message. I mean, you got to be kidding me. They could frame me and say I overdosed on drugs. They could frame me and say I overdosed on drugs. The great noticing. I'm going to play this clip. Yeah. Well, Oprah's got a lot to answer for, including Lahaina. Let's not talk about that too loudly right now. To fully understand Michael Jackson, to fully understand who he was, why he did what he did, why he acted the way he acted, this is one of the best explanations in a short window of conversation that I think explains it best.
Read all the things written about me. I wasn't aware that the world thought I was so weird and bizarre. But when you grow up, as I did, in front of 100 million people since the age of 5, you're automatically different. My childhood was completely taken away from me. There was no Christmas, there was no birthdays. It was not a normal childhood, no normal pleasures of childhood. Those were exchanged for hard work, struggle, and pain. And that's why I love children and learn so much from being around them. I realize that many of our world's problems today, from the inner city crime to large-scale wars and terrorism and our overcrowded prisons, are a result of the fact that children have had their childhood stolen from them.
There have been reports that Michael saved many kids from going to Epstein's Island. This has even been suggested, again, I can't verify it, but it's been suggested that Macaulay Culkin said as much. Can't verify that. I'm not going to claim that that's the truth, but it's certainly possible. What I do believe is that Michael was a deeply troubled person, for sure. He had a lot of quirks. And again, somebody alluded to in the chat, and I agree, the time that he went over the balcony with the baby, I think that was like 2002, if I remember correctly. Very odd behavior. But the timing of everything really puts it all into perspective. Many people didn't know about this song, Palestine, Don't Cry. I didn't know about it. I didn't know it existed. I do now. And you're telling me that this song that he wanted to release as part of his greatest hits album that ultimately came out in 1995, you're telling me that this song was shelved by Tommy Mottola at the beginning of 1993? And the next thing you know, he has child sex crimes brought against him? And they're all connected to the Zionist Jewish cabal? And if that's not enough, he has to take on Schmutzy as his spiritual advisor? You couldn't make it more obvious that this was a hit job. And that we all have to reassess how we look at Michael Jackson and what he went through or what he didn't do. Putting all things aside, and I mean all of it, he's probably the greatest entertainer we've ever seen. He was magical. I was born at 11:30 a.m. Friday, May 6, 1983. The number one song in America at the time was Beat It by Michael Jackson. And it always was one of my favorite songs. And it's one of the greatest music videos. And he sure looked a lot different when he made that video. Obviously, for those who know about his history and when he started changing his physical appearance was after the fire incident with his hair, doing the Pepsi commercial. And obviously a lot changed since then. But I never doubted that his talent was as great as anything. I always thought it was strange, and I can still remember at the end of 1988 when he was on the cover of TV Guide, and I looked at him and I'm thinking, that's a woman, right? No, it's Michael Jackson, and he's a man. And then he did the Smooth Criminal video, the preempt to it, where he's smashing the car with the crowbar. And these memories in my head that I can still remember comprehending this level of talent that he had and what he brought to the world. He brought a lot to the world. And it's very likely that he got taken out. Much like JFK, much like Charlie Kirk, you get to a point of immense power and influence, and you wonder why so many people don't speak up, why they don't say what they need to say when it's obvious that the truth is right in front of their face. There's a reason they don't say anything. And the reason is simple. We are overrun by a Zionist cabal, mostly Jewish, powerful, influential, rich, many pedophiles, but a ruling class nonetheless. And if you cross them, they will make an example out of you like they did MJ. Now, I'd like to think in the time that we're living in today that perhaps it's not as detrimental as it once was. But my goodness, if this doesn't make you question everything you thought you knew about Michael Jackson, I know I'm questioning it. And so when we ask ourselves, what is it that we question? Why are these stories so important? I bring you to the point of why we continue to talk about what's going on with Turning Point USA and Erika Kirk and Candace Owens. It appears that Erika Kirk is a groomer herself, that she has been grooming young girls into the world that she likely was groomed into herself. Said she was a honeypot, said that she was a trap. Well, this will make your head spin.
Help clarify. I can build on that. Like I said, I spoke with Jillian, and that information, part of that information is very accurate. It was about payment for rent, and that is how Jillian meets Erika Kirk.
All right, I'm going to pull this back for a second, and I'm going to pull up the story. Erika Kirk faces backlash over alleged inappropriate text with a 15-year-old, absolutely vile. And I agree, it is absolutely vile. Erika Kirk is once again facing controversy over alleged text messages between her and a 15-year-old dating back to 2014. Although the messages have yet to be verified, they were verified by Candace Owens, and the lady's name is Jill Falcon. They have sparked concerns about grooming among netizens, with her late husband, Charlie Kirk's pal Candace Owens, also weighing in on the issue. Some have condemned Erika Kirk's actions using strong terms such as disgusting and criminal. Meanwhile, the mother of two has yet to address the allegations publicly. Erika has recently been the subject of increased scrutiny of her past following her rise in public attention after the tragic death of her husband, Charlie Kirk. Now, fresh allegations have surfaced against the 37-year-old, this time involving a minor and dating back to 2014. In messages that have gone viral on social media, the mother of two appears to have communicated extensively with the alleged girl, despite being significantly older at the time. Yeah, 25 and you're communicating with a 15-year-old? I don't know. Seems a little weird. In some instances, Erika Kirk, who went by her paternal surname at the time, Franzi, was seen using flirtatious terms such as calling the girl sweetheart and allegedly sent her chocolates and birthday wishes. Some of the communications also reportedly included what appeared to be inappropriate jokes, whose meaning seemed to be understood only by Erika and the then 15-year-old. The messages were shared by an X account believed to be linked to the individual and appears to remain active at this time. So, here we go.
Opened the door. She's presumably living with or visiting her boyfriend at the time, and she sees Erika Kirk and she thinks, oh my gosh, this girl, 25-year-old girl, is so beautiful. And Erika is extremely kind to her, and they start speaking. And somehow, and Jillian does not recall how this transpired, somehow during this rent arrangement, Erika and her exchange numbers. Okay. So what happens next is they begin messaging each other, a texting relationship, and across social media. making comments on one another's posts. And in the beginning, it seems fine enough, I guess. The conversation is polite, maybe something that you might expect to see between someone who has some level of notoriety or fame and one of their fans over social media. But then it picks up, just as Nicey indicates. It picks up, and I am going to allow you to listen to her explain what then transpires. And I would also, again, like to reinforce the fact that this girl, Jillian, is 15 years old and Erika is 25. It's worth mentioning that at this point in her biography, Erika is also working with sex trafficking charities. This is that year where she says that she got involved with a sex trafficking charity over in China. I'll have more for you on that next week, but take it away, Nicey.
On February 13th, 2014, Jillian replied to one of Erika's tweets by saying, "At Erika Francevy, gorgeous as always." A few hours later, she then tweeted, "Why did at Erika Francevy just send me this?" Laughing emojis. And there is a photo which says, "This Valentine's Day, I am going to touch your butt." Jillian posted this tweet on March 6, 2014. So Erika says, "Let me call you. Hold on, sweetheart. Give me a sex." Wow. And then Jillian says, "Okay," and puts laughing emojis. Erika then says, Sex too, but not from you, LOL. Holy laughing emoji. You always make me laugh. I don't bat for the other team just yet. On March 13th, 2014, Jillian shared another screenshot of her text messages with Erika. Erika says, "I forgot to tell you, hydrate tonight. No alcohol, and don't eat a lot of salty foods. You don't want to look bloated." Jillian then responds, "Thank you." Erika says, "No alcohol." Really, Erika? Age recognition, you twat waffle. Apparently, I haven't had my coffee yet. What the hell, Erika? Laughing emoji. Well, on that bite, ... Note, damn you, Siri. Come on, hashtag the struggle. What are you trying to say, laughing emoji? Spit it out, you twat waffle. On the morning of March 26, 2014, Jillian tweeted, "I just want to be somebody's woman crush Wednesday. Is that too much to ask?" That evening, she then tweets, "Thank you at Erika Francevy for making my whole week." And she shares this photo, and the photo is of a gnome, and it says, "I want to be inside your lady garden." No.
This is what grooming looks like in real time. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time, and it happens by using a position of influence, leverage, and power and softening up somebody into thinking that they're the greatest person alive. I'm going to make you a big star. I'm going to make you a model, and you're going to be successful. In reality, these are the hallmarks of a groomer for abusers. Now, thank goodness she is at least post-pubescent, but she's still a child. And the only reason why Erika would be doing something like this is because she was fulfilling the role that Ghislaine Maxwell was doing as well. It's one big, disgusting cycle that little by little is coming out. This is why I give Candace a lot of credit. She knows exactly how to tell a long story, piece by piece by piece, to make sure it never dies. And now, as the fall from grace that Turning Point USA is clearly going to be going through, especially after the Super Bowl halftime debacle, this is not a surprise. And more of these stories will come out. Remember what I said, guys. Remember what I said just a few months ago. When there's money, people are riding high, things are going well, no one's going to care. When the ship starts to sink, the rats are going to try to get off the ship. When they know the money's drying up and the operation can't pay for itself anymore, people are going to talk. And that's why stories like this are going to come out, and they're going to keep coming out, and they're going to get much, much worse.
I'm saying on April 3rd, 2014, Jillian tweeted this picture and said, "I miss this goon." A few minutes later, she tweeted, "Did Erika just text me hashtag no new friends? Oh my Fucking God, I can't. A few days later, on April 5th, 2014, Jillian posted this tweet. Getting this in the mail from Erika Francevy. And in the photo is a red box of chocolate-covered strawberries and other chocolate desserts. And the card in the photo says this. Happy Sweet 16, beautiful girl. Keep strong in faith and know that you're loved. But most of all, never forget that you are perfect and amazing just the way you are. I am so proud of you. Today is the first day of another 365-day journey around the sun. Enjoy the trip, boo. Love you, E.
This is a 26-year-old sending this to a 16-year-old. I mean, we have to recognize that if this was a 26-year-old man doing this to a 16-year-old girl, I would like to think that there probably would be quite a few angry people, and perhaps even the law might be involved. I'm just saying there is this level of hypocrisy that is accepted. This is grooming, full stop. Full stop.
On June 7, 2014, Jillian shared this tweet. This has to be the most heartfelt compliment I've ever gotten. And she attached a screenshot of her conversation with Erika. So Jillian says, thank you. Erika says, you have the most stunning features. Jillian says, best compliment ever. Erika says, your eyes, your lips, your skin, you're absolutely beautiful. Jillian responds with the crying emoji, you're making me cry. In February of 2014, Jillian went on a family trip to Puerto Rico, and Erika was liking and commenting on her Instagram posts. So Jillian posted this photo of the beach, and Erika says, unreal gorgeous. And then Jillian responds, this is by far my favorite picture I took. My mom wants to get it blown up at Erika Francevy. Erika responds, I could see why, boo. Jillian responds, so perfect at Erika Francevy. Erika then responds, ... yes, I know you are.
I'm just going to follow that with a little bit of silence. I just want us to all contemplate it. Let's actually contemplate it for the people who are going to try to explain it, the Erika splainers, who are going to be like, that's not weird. No. What? Never been a 25-year-old sending chocolate-covered strawberries to a 15-year-old? That's not weird. You guys are haters. No, what? Oh, come on. You've never, as a 25-year-old, decided to message a 15-year-old about their lips and their skin and how perfect they are. You never decided to message them when they posted a photo of them with a person that's their age and said, no new friends. Almost like territorial, like or that's obviously all just a joke or something like that. By the way, just in general, going back to how they met, I'm trying to rationalize in my head, under what scenario, if a 15-year-old, if you opened the door and a 15-year-old was there, would you exchange numbers with them?
If you have sinister motives, that's why. Like I said, this story's not going away. Erika Kirk, whatever she is, and whatever her role is, whatever she's been tasked with, she's a bad actress, and she does not protect her role in the assignment very well. Who's to say that she might not be in danger? Candace is not going to stop, and neither are we. And the only thing I take away from this segment is that if you really don't think that sexual abuse is common, just look at this. Now, we don't know to the full extent of how far this went or what ended up happening to this girl. I know that she spoke with Candace, and perhaps she's got more to say. But you can see the inappropriate grooming nature of the conversation. And there's so many different places you can go with this. But when you get to a certain level of power and influence, there's a lot of things people will be willing to do to stay in the good graces of those that have gotten them there, or they're just outright into that type of behavior. Who knows? This plays out way too much like a Law and Order SVU episode or some drama on TV. You know, people always love these alternate universe shows because, again, it's fantasy. When it becomes reality, you find yourself asking, do I really want to know the truth? Well, in the world I live in, I want to know the truth. And I hope you all do too. I hope you all have enjoyed this conversation this evening. And we want to thank you all for your amazing support as always. One more time, please consider going over to patreon.com/revolutionary change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty, yet obviously very suppressed, but still growing channel. And I want to thank our last super chatter of the evening. Big shout out to Citizen Pendejo with the 50 pesos. As Pete says, Revo is in the air. Trump and media are underestimating the pedestrian fallout. Maybe. All it takes is one more Preeti, one more Charlie Kirk, and shit hits the fan. Yeah, I think we're dancing on the head of a pin right now, that's for sure. So smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. Monday night, President's Day, we've got an all-star lineup. Guy Christensen, John Kiriakou, and Margaret Kimberly. We love you all. We appreciate you all. We'll see you Monday. Please take that down and free Palestine. Good night, guys.